Sam Hartman and company back on the field for Wake Forest. He's trying to go up top, going down the middle, has a man, pass is caught there. A.T. Perry breaks a tackle, touchdown.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Keeper escapes, makes a cut. Daniels in space. Who score?
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Trying for the end zone is May. Has a man. Did he catch it? What a catch in the corner by Paysour.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Play action. McCarthy, all day to throw. Finds a crosser. On time for a first down.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Plenty of time for Stroud. Directing receivers, flips it to the end zone. Caught! Touchdown! Marvin Harrison Jr.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Bowers after the play fake, showing his great athleticism. He's going to take it all the way for his third touchdown of the game.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on this Tuesday afternoon. Paul Catalina is wrapped up in a lot of production of our first week of the Texas high school football season with broadcasts that we have coming up on Friday. So he is out today, back with us tomorrow. Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak. In the studio today, Garrett Ross, also Levi Caraway is here with us. So did you get the Brian Murphy tweet, Garrett? You did not?
No, I can't get Twitter.
Brian Murphy earlier today from WRAL, Craig, in Raleigh, North Carolina. The HCC president's regularly scheduled call today was canceled. Not an unusual occurrence, carry on, but yet again, then John Wilner came back with this, who is, of course, covers the Pac-12. I thought, and Dennis Dodd will join us in about 10 minutes. The ACC may or may not decide on expansion before June 30th of 2036. That's their grant of rights, depending on alignment of Ursa Minor constellation relative to exact midpoint of research triangle, optimal equinox in odd number years. Kind of having fun with the timeline of the ACC, and yet, of course, he had to sit there and watch for 13 months the Pac-12. One delay, timeline, meeting canceled, no vote, etc. after another. I thought that was some good sense of humor on John Wilner's part.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's laughing after the fact now, and that was certainly quite the saga. So, good for him to be able to have some fun with it. I appreciated his coverage more than I certainly appreciated whatever others were trying to put out there at times out west. But, it's kind of – that's how it seems is, hey, between now and then, something could happen. At first when you started reading that between now and 2036, I was like, dear God, like we're not, like hopefully this is a made-up quote, and thankfully it was, because I didn't know where that was going. And this ACC story, there is still some legs to it, obviously, because until there's, a final decision made on what's going to happen with their intentions, or with, just the state of the Pac-12 itself and all these other teams that are somewhat in limbo or involved, until that ceases, until there's some finality there, then it's going to remain a story. I don't know. At least it doesn't feel to me like it has nearly as much juice to it as the Big 12, Pac-12 stuff did. And maybe that's just because the Big 12 is no longer involved, so I just don't sense it as much, and I don't see it as much as I did before, and it's not as on the front porch as it was then. I certainly see, a lot of ACC and just random folks talking about it, but it does seem like it's not nearly as big of a topic. And the reason why is because football season's freaking here.
Yep.
Mean, that's the thing, is football season's here. We get games this weekend. So, if you were hoping to grab a bunch of headlines in realignment these days, I think it's going to be, harder than it was these past few months, because there's going to be real deal results to talk about. But that's the story that continues on. And I see like all these updates, and I don't know what to believe from what's actually going on. I don't know, what is next up on the docket, or, I know that there was apparently supposed to be a meeting, like you said, and then that didn't happen. So, as the world turns, continues on out east, and hopefully there is some, resolution there soon, and certainly there will need to be for the schools involved directly, those 4 out west.
All right, so here's New York City. Oregon quarterback Bo Nix. Week 2, they'll be playing in Lubbock against Texas Tech. There are billboards everywhere in New York City. There is one of them that is from one of the streets. And then look at this one here, a couple of buildings that are separated, and the right arm of Bo Nix in the one building, most of his body, bodacious is what the building says, in downtown New York City.
Yeah, that's really cool. Heisman marketing is not anything new to Oregon. I seem to recall they did something similar, not that cool looking, when Joey Harrington was a Heisman, contender, and then obviously Mariota won it a few years back. And I remember seeing, him going through New York City. I don't remember if they had billboards for him. I'm sure they probably did, but I definitely remember the Harrington ones. And so, it's that time of year. There will be other things that schools send out. The Ed Oliver bobblehead years ago was a big one. There's been various other little, ways that schools have tried to advertise, whether it's sending out a bobblehead. Like the Ed Oliver one was certainly a memorable one.
Yep.
Others send out like notepads that have the guy on them. Others send out other little trinkets. And I'm curious to see how, others attack the Heisman campaigns, but certainly Oregon's got every right to want to throw Bo Nix out there and put his name out there and promote him as much as possible, because getting him back was a big deal, and they expect to be pretty good. So we're going to see a lot more of those billboards in New York. I would imagine we'll probably see a Caleb Williams at some point in time, and several others. Quinn Ewers maybe, Dylan Gabriel maybe. Who knows? Out of the Big 12, who could end up doing that?
Michael Penix.
Michael Penix out of the Pac-12, yeah.
Yeah, from the Big 12.
He could definitely be a guy like that. There'll be more. Certainly, the Heisman campaigns are only getting started, and Bo Nix is deserving of that.
We have a couple of other quarterback notes. We'll get to those in a moment, but there was the note from earlier that Reggie Chaney, the former Houston and Arkansas basketball player, died on Monday. He was 23. There was no cause of death immediately available. Joseph Duarte from the Houston Chronicle was going to jump on with us today to discuss Houston football, the quarterback with Donovan Smith, etc. And we'll also get into the Reggie Chaney. There was, in fact, supposed to be an event with Houston basketball, but they canceled that from earlier. It was supposed to be today, according to Joseph Duarte and Houston men's basketball. Meanwhile, some quarterback news. Former Texas and Nebraska quarterback Casey Thompson, he is now at Florida Atlantic with his ex-coach at Tom Herman. He has been named the starting quarterback for Florida Atlantic. Georgia Tech has named former A&M, a transfer from A&M, Haynes King, as their starting quarterback. And also North Texas head coach in his first year, Eric Morris, announced that Stone Earle will be the starting quarterback in their opening game against Cal. Chandler Rogers will also play for North Texas. So news there.
Yeah, Chandler Rogers had transferred over, so I don't know what the expectations were as far as that job goes. I know Chandler Rogers had a bit of experience, but, good on Stone Earle. And, as far as Casey Thompson, I don't think that comes as much of a surprise. I mean, following Herman to FAU, he's on his third school now. It's got to work out here, or you wonder, it's got to. He doesn't have really any other options. So not surprised in the slightest that he won that job. Just the familiarity, the experience, I guess in hand with the experience, the age, and the time in the saddle. Just all that is not a surprise whatsoever. What was the other one? You threw up 3 of them, I think.
Stone Earle, Casey Thompson, and also Haynes King at Georgia Tech.
Yeah, good for Haynes King. It was a tough time at A&M. He's a huge get for them, and was supposed to be their star of the future, much like, the way Quinn Ewers was talked about, or these other, hyped up quarterbacks are talked about. I remember that was the the feeling around Haynes King there for a minute, and then that dissipated pretty quickly once he, got on the field and saw a good bit of time and just clearly wasn't quite ready for those lights or, just that setting at that moment. And it worked out to where, now he's getting another opportunity, and, it says a lot about him that he was able to go out to Atlanta and go win that job. And I'm sure he'll do a tremendous job out there for Georgia Tech. But interesting to see him out there just because, he's an East Texas guy, and you don't see Longview quarterbacks go and start for Georgia Tech ever. Or very often do you see guys even head to Georgia Tech. So just to be an interesting team to keep an extra eye out for or look a little closer than maybe I normally would because of the Earl Campbell Award and the fact they've got a Texas gunslinger now there as their starter. So, good for him, and that's some resiliency right there.
Garrett, are we getting Dennis Dodd? Okay, good. Also, Washington running back Cam Davis, Kalen DeBoer, the head coach of the Huskies, saying that he is out for the year due to an injury. Last year, 13 rushing touchdowns and over 500 yards rushing for Washington. He is out for the rest of the year. That's a tough blow for the Huskies at running back.
That's a terrible loss for them. And I saw Softy Mahler, I guess, had that out there as well. And as you can imagine, a lot of Washington fans bummed out by that news. So, to get all the way to this point and to have that news drop, and there will be other injuries that we hear about, I'm sure. But, somebody you were expecting to be a big part of what you were going to do on offense and just team-wise, that's tough. And, it's unfortunate.
Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, joins us on 365 Sports with Craig and David Smoak. Dennis, thanks for your time. I thought it might be nice and maybe something new that we brought you on and discuss football, if that's okay.
That'd be great.
Knowing that there's always something bubbling, like right now with the ACC, Pac-12, or whoever else. All right, so Texas is the media poll darling. At least they got the first place votes, enough to be the number one team. And it does appear as they're set up. Your thoughts about right now with Texas at the top of the poll, and your thoughts about who you think is the conference favorite?
I just got done doing my picks for the Big 12, and I'll break some news here. I picked Texas Tech. And halfway because Tech, won 1-8 in Joey McGuire's first year. Tyler Shucks in place, 16 returning starters. I think it's fascinating that game at Austin, November 24th. They could end up playing 2 weeks in a row. But also because you guys know this, we've been led down this path so many times to Texas that I just said I can't pick Texas until they do it. I understand why they're the favorites. I think they should be the favorites. But personally, I can't pick them. They've got to get over this hump of is Texas back. And if they win the league, I'm not sure Texas is back, considering where they're going next year. But I've got Tech. I don't think it's a very deep conference this year, and that's part of the reason Texas is favored. But looking around, that's my pick right now.
They've got the quarterback back. They've got a lot of other good players back there in Lubbock, and obviously a lot of fire there with Joey McGuire. When's the last time, Dennis, you can recall sort of the feeling around Lubbock as the one there is right now?
It's been a while. It's been since Leach. This is, I think it ties the most wins with since Leach, the 8th last year. So and they put in whatever it is, $200 million in facilities. They are all in under Kirby Hocutt, under Joey McGuire. Now with this new little conference, I think it's part of the story of the new Big 12 starting this year, and obviously.
Okay, we just lost him. We just accidentally cut him off. We'll try to get back in touch with Dennis here in just a second. So there's a couple other notes. Bob Thompson, we'll get to this later in the show, but I don't know if you saw this from Bob Thompson about really what did with the reports about what yesterday Kirk Schultz at Washington State had to say. He has a response to that, and we will get to that here in just a moment, too, once we get Dennis back on the show.
That's great. Look, I guess, do we have Dennis?
We have Dennis back. Sorry about that, Dennis. Yeah. We got cut off. If you don't mind finishing up that comment.
Yeah, I don't know where you left off, but I just think I was saying that with the loss of Texas and Oklahoma, who are going to be that team or teams who's going to rule the league? It's going to be somebody different every year. It's going to be Oklahoma State. It seems like it's the next best program, but with the addition of those new schools, who's to say? I think people forget BYU was a national program for a long, long time until they went independent. Cincinnati's been to the playoff. UCF has proven. You've got the Pac-12 schools. So I think it's going to be interesting. I don't think this league can afford to have a different, have necessarily a different champion every year, because that's what's happened to the Pac-12, and look where it's gotten. Now, what will help them is the 12-team playoff. So you're almost always going to be represented at least one and possibly two teams every year.
Dennis, if there is a team that's carrying the banner, Texas Tech in the future is a great candidate. Some may say an Oklahoma State, but TCU, I mean, they're the only Big 12 team to have actually won a playoff game. They lose a lot, obviously, but what sense do you get from just how, dialed in Sonny Dykes is there with that situation in Fort Worth, the ability to take advantage of the transfer portal, surround himself with, a new OC and Kendall Browse? How much fall off are you expecting from a pretty magical run a year ago?
Well, I think there has to be fall off because look where they were. I mean, that was an all-time season at TCU. Everything had to go right. That being said, they've got a plug-and-play quarterback. They've got the guy that has won the job before he got hurt going into the season. Sonny is recruiting like a madman, and it's so ironic to me that, remember TCU, we all know the story about Chris Del Conte going and, seeing the lost Dodd and getting them in the league. And Texas used to look down its nose at TCU. Well, TCU, beat Texas 7 of the last 10 times, I think, and now established themselves. It's not a national program, certainly one that is in this discussion about who's going to be the best in the Big 12, and they're just getting rolling under Sunday. I think Sunday bottled something really special there. So, and by the way, I would tell our betting friends out there to go heavy on the Frogs in the first game against Colorado. I don't think I'm going out on a limb saying that, but I think Sonny's got something to do that. Knowing Sonny, Sonny's an accomplished coach. He's won at the highest levels. Deion is Deion, but he hasn't won at this level. So I'd look for TCU to throw a number on.
Yeah, we discussed it yesterday. In fact, Sonny joined us yesterday to discuss how they have replaced this player or 8 or 9 players, it seems like, with portal additions, because they did a great job with it last year. And Craig looked it up, and what did you say it was? The 20-point point spread or something like that for you, Colorado?
3 touchdowns.
Yeah, 3 touchdowns. And I thought it would be like 14, but that goes to show you what a lot of people think about that game.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's on national television because of Deion. If it wasn't, it would kind of be an afterthought. Because TCU is going to have more than enough to cover that spread. But how are they going to play? The last we saw them, talking about Colorado, that was kind of a staged thing on ESPN on that spring practice. Even though they had a lot of big plays, it was very entertaining. I was, with my naked eye, not impressed with their linemen. And I don't know where they're going to get them from. They brought in, last I checked on 24/7, 51 transfers. I asked a bunch of people during Colorado spring practice in the aftermath of that, are there 50 players that are, what would have been then Pac-12 worthy players? And coach after coach said no. So who's he filled in with? It'll be interesting to see.
Oklahoma in this last run, I mean, here you have Texas getting all of the highlights of the preseason, a lot of the accolades. I mean, Oklahoma's getting a little bit of that too, but certainly not what they've been accustomed to, Dennis. And coming off last year, how do you see the Sooners with Brent Venables? Do they learn from their mistakes and now he's more seasoned and they know a bit better about the situation and what all is involved? Or are they kind of in that period where it's just not going to be an automatic double-digit wins every year?
Yeah, it's not. And I will say, I don't know what the word is with Brent Venables. You can't say he's on the hot seat, but if this happens 2 years in a row, Oklahoma's not going to sit around. I mean, I got 2 words for you, John Blake. And I love Brent Venables. I think he's the best defensive mind in the country. That didn't show through last year. I don't think they can't be any worse than they were last year defensively. And this kid who led the league and Stutzman that led the league, I think, in tackles. They got a guy coming in from Indiana, one of the linebackers that's really, really good. So they're going to be better defensively. I think at quarterback they're set. Dylan Gabriel was good. He was not great, but that's okay. But I think if they get back to an 8-4 season and show progress, they'll be fine. But that was a stupendous fall, particularly defensively. I was amazed.
Dennis Dodd with us. Dennis, there seems to be right now peace and quiet, although there's the constant what might happen with the ACC and or what may occur with whoever is left of the Pac-12. Do you see anything on the horizon just based on your knowledge, or is that just going to be one of those things that like dies on the vine?
What, the Cal Stanford stuff?
Yes. What's going to happen in your opinion with Cal Stanford and ACC?
Yeah, well, everybody's waiting for that, for the next shoe to drop. That has to be resolved before we do anything on the West Coast with those two other Pac schools. There was a president's call today that was canceled. It was regularly scheduled, but obviously you'd be a fool not to think they were going to discuss that topic. And from what I've been able to discern, there have been no cracks in the wall of those four schools who are voting against Stanford and Cal joining the league. They only need to slip one vote for them to join to make it 75% and 12-3 among the presidents. But those four presidents are staunchly against it for now. And then if they stay that way, and again, what's the timeline? I was told over the weekend, nothing over the weekend, but maybe, this week, you'd have to think it's getting close to the season. You'd like to have everything wrapped up. But if they don't get in, boy, that really messes things up in terms of those of us who, not only for those schools, but those of us who cover. I can't envision a world watching Stanford play in a conference with, say, Fresno State, San Jose State. You know what I'm talking about? I don't think that happens. So then do they go independent? I think that's the last option for Stanford. Do they swallow their academic pride and play in the Mountain West, with those schools? Or do you go get a higher payday, marginally higher payday in the American where there's some like-minded teams like Tulane and some other academic institutions, SMU maybe, where, you could play with those teams. But this is really interesting because the market, the networks, the rights holders, whoever, has drawn the line as playoff-worthy teams. In other words, we can stage a playoff without Oregon State, without Washington State, without Cal, without Stanford. I think that's the larger message. And it will continue in the future. It almost happened to the Big 12 and it collapsed. Mm-hmm. What they were saying, and Oklahoma and Texas left, and you guys know this, they were within weeks of really being in trouble, and the Pac-12 didn't act, is that we could have a national playoff without the Big 12 remainder. I think that's scary.
Dennis, do you think that that's still top of mind? Obviously, the Big 12 has done what they've done, but it just seems like between comments from Sankey about the playoff and just kind of the feel around everything, do you see the chairs being lined up for that, in fact, to be kind of the next big wave of change that occurs? Is those two just playing the bully role versus everybody else and blocking others out?
Those two conferences?
Yes.
Yeah. The August 30th meeting in Dallas is going to be fascinating. I believe that's the presidents and the commissioners, but we're talking about the CFP. And Greg Sankey has left more than breadcrumbs behind him, saying he's in favor of 12 best. Well, that is going to be fascinating if they go that way. Because I think clearly 6 and 6 won't endure because the Pac-12 is gone. So is it 5 automatic, 5 highest ranked conference champions, 7 at large? Mm-hmm. Is there something different to that? Is it 12? And Greg Sankey has said time after time that he wouldn't be against that. And I think I'll say this: I think anything that keeps Congress or antitrust people in Congress from getting involved is going to be a win for the Big Ten and SEC. In other words, how much revenue can we allow you to earn where you don't sue? I thought it was that way with the BCS. I thought it was that way with the 14 playoff. And if there's enough money there, because it's going to be a windfall in the 12-team playoff, can you, quote unquote, buy off those group of 5 schools by giving them a share large enough that allows 12 at large, which means and I love this. My editor looked this up. This is huge news, guys. In the history of the playoff, had there been a 12-team playoff in the last 9 years, an average of 7.3 teams per year would have been in the playoff from the Big Ten and SEC. That means in any given year, a total of 4.7 schools from the remaining 99 in FBS would have been in the playoff.
That's a great stat. That's doing some homework right there.
Yeah.
Dennis, when it comes to the Big 12, they obviously got what they wanted ultimately out west. They kind of threw water on the idea of, anything basketball related or UConn or that for the time being. And it's gone quiet, and rightfully so. I mean, they got what they wanted, but what sense do you get? Because we've talked to multiple ADs now who are like, yeah, we're keeping an eye out on the ACC and what all's going on out there, but hey, we're content. There's no more money to squeeze from the TV market. So what do you sense is just kind of their stance right now, and what are they looking at? Is it just all inwards at this point, or is there still a little bit of wandering eye just in case, chaos happens elsewhere?
Look, I think we're all conditioned to say never in this. I mean, it'd be stupid to say it. You'd be stupid to put absolutes on any of it.
Sure.
But I'll just take Brett Yormark at his word lately when he was on that podcast last week with Andrew Marchand. From the New York Post and the other guy from Sports Business Journal. And he said, no, we're done. I know for a fact that they were never interested really in Oregon State and Washington State. I'm like, I don't know how they go to their partners again and ask for more money for those guys who are not worth, the 14 that they're going to have, or the 16 that they're going to have, excuse me. You can't go look for a full share for Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, or Washington State, even if you wanted to. And I don't think they want to right now. I don't think that in this whole thing, there's two words I've learned that these administrators use. You're either additive or you're diluted. You know what those words mean. You're either add to the conference or you're diluting the conference. And I think those four are diluted for the Big 12 right now. So I think they're good. Yeah.
Dennis, great stuff, and I appreciate you jumping on last second with us. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for all of what you've done, the great segments with us, and hope to have you again. And enjoy football season if we possibly can. I think we all can't wait.
Man, I'd love to see some ball. It'd be great.
Yep, thank you. Wins, losses, scores, stats, ups and downs, overranked, underranked, hyped too much or not enough?
You say that, but then we started talking football, and we immediately pivoted to realignment midway through. So
yeah.
It can't get here fast enough, but yeah, I mean, we try there, and yet here it comes rearing its ugly head back, the realignment part of it. So, I am interested in his thoughts and others' thoughts on, TCU trying to run it back. I think they're a very interesting team because I could see where they're still really dang good, but just not quite as lucky. The Texas thing is fascinating because it is the final time. I mean, I know that we'll talk about them still afterwards, and we'll talk about Oklahoma, and we still talk about A&M and all of that, but it just won't be as up front and in our faces as it normally is. Mm-hmm. Just the fact that they're gearing up for that last run, as is OU, with those brands and what they've meant in good ways and bad for the Big 12, just the history there. It's going to be amazing to see, what that final run looks like for both, especially when both, at least in their own places, feel like they're going to be really good. I know people have more doubts about Oklahoma than they do about Texas, but I get the sense from Oklahoma people that they feel like last year was an aberration. Like that wasn't real. Like that was just, a bunch of stuff went wrong. That's not Oklahoma. They're going to be right back. So, remains to be seen. I could see both sides of the coin for each of those teams. And I know that's not me trying to hedge my bet in any way because I don't have anything riding on it, but I see where it is that thin of a line where it could be one way or the other very easily for Oklahoma in particular. For Texas, I don't see a scenario where they're bad, but one where they lose like a couple to 3 games, that would be pretty fascinating and certainly is possible.
You're talking about in the conference or overall?
Overall.
Okay, yeah.
I still think,
well, it's been since 96, 7, or 8 or whatever it was since they had back-to-back losing seasons. So that's probably a part of just the tradition, the history, and the not entitlement, but what fans believe. It's been 25 years since they had back-to-back train wrecks. And so I could see where everyone should be much more positive, and also year 2 of any coaching staff.
I mean, I was talking about Texas, though, at that point. I'm saying for them, I could see where they are, an unbeaten national title contender, but it's also possible they could lose 3 games. If that happens, then that would be fascinating to see a team that's as hyped up as they are drop in multiple games potentially. Now, I think a lot would have to go sideways for that to happen because I do think they're geared up to be really good. But go down the line. I mean, Texas Tech hasn't been a sleeper for months, according to me, because I've heard them mentioned as a sleeper about 150 times now at this point, and hearing them as a sleeper still at this point is ridiculous because that label is I don't think it still applies. I think that there's enough light that's been positioned on Texas Tech where they're not going to sneak up on anybody, certainly not in the middle of the night while people are sleeping. So I think they're very much out there in front, but can they grab hold of that attention and run with it? I think Joey McGuire and company feel like they're ready to do that, but going out and doing it is actually a different thing entirely. So I mean, there's just a lot of fun storylines and a lot of expectations and high hopes, and not all of them are going to be lived up to, but the ones that are and the ones that aren't, I can't wait to unpack all of that.
Yeah, I don't think Tech is a sleeper. You can't. I was surprised they weren't a part of the top 25. I thought they would slide in somewhere between 20 and 25, but I do think that it's not hype. It's just confidence based on how they ended last year and where they feel they are as Joey McGuire hits year number 2. When we come back, Joseph Duarte had him on to discuss the Donovan Smith decision. Not a surprise. Dana Holgorsen and Houston, but then also Reggie Chaney and that tragic story from yesterday, a former Houston and Arkansas basketball player who is dead at the age of 23. And this is 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, my dentist, and I am so happy that he is. The other day, I don't know, driving or what I was doing, but I like the automatic habit I used to have of there's something there. Oh, wait a minute, this tooth has got a crack. Or, that's gone. That doesn't mean there aren't things coming up that I have to deal with, but all of what I had, from two teeth being taken out, to 2 implants being put in on the front right side of my mouth, to a crown being replaced, a month ago, the second from the far right bottom being replaced. It was always like having something where I had to use a lot of floss and all those little, whatever you call them, sliders to get something out of it. There was a little bit of a crack or a little bit indention in one of my teeth in the bottom left. All that's been fixed. There still may be some things to do, and we will get that done. But slowly and methodically, but yet again, in a very, very short amount of time, my dental work is a lot better because of Dr. Steve Childress. He finally just sat me down one day, probably while doing something else to a tooth that was not feeling well, and explained that if I don't do it right now, then I will have twice as many problems in a year or 2 or 3. Stonewood Dental, your comfort is their priority. It is mine too, in Robinson, Texas.
During the Make This the Summer event, save big on a 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited with $3,500 plus 2.9% for 72 months. Or a 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport with employee pricing for all plus 1.9% for 72 months. And an extra $1,000 rebate. Or if that's not enough, get a 2023 Jeep Compass 10% off MSRP. That's right, and no payments for 90 days on all offers. Find the Jeep that fits you at Allen Samuels in Waco.
The future's bright, the time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Saw this earlier today from Joseph Duarte in the wake of the Reggie Chaney death that Houston coach Kelvin Sampson canceled a scheduled appearance on Wednesday at the Toyota Center, promoting the upcoming, well, it will be later on in December, Houston College Basketball Showcase. Joseph Duarte from the Houston Chronicle has been reporting on this, among other things as well, and he joins us on 365 Sports with Craig and also David Smoak. Joseph, I got a feeling that this hit everybody like you would imagine, like a concrete wall. Your thoughts about it, and your just thoughts about Reggie Chaney.
You're right. It was like a sledgehammer. This was a program that very tight-knit. Kelvin Sampson preaches the family atmosphere, just like a lot of programs do, but they really live it. And you see the Sampson family all around the program. Their fingerprints are all over it. So they're very close. And to have this news break yesterday where Reggie Chaney was found unresponsive in a apartment in the Arlington area, pronounced dead at the age of 23. It's hit this program immensely to the point where Kelvin Sampson needed some time to process before he even issued a statement. They had just gotten back from Australia about a week ago. So to have something like this happen to a player who was such a big part of some of the most successful teams that they've had in the last 30 years, a young man who was about to begin his professional career overseas in Greece, and just an overall good guy. I know in the media we talk to so many guys and ladies, and you get to know people, and sometimes they do the interviews just to do it. It's part of being an athlete. But Reggie Chaney was as consummate of a pro as you could get for someone in college. Always had a smile on his face, and he was, as you see the tributes that are pouring in, the one word that keeps coming up is solid. And this is a guy that was a winner. He kind of epitomized what this program is with the culture and the toughness and the physical relentlessness, that kind of stuff. But to have his life cut short And right now, there's no cause of death, but, the people that I've spoken with in Arlington and law enforcement say that it does not appear to be anything foul play related. But nonetheless, it's a terrible, tragic situation that the University of Houston family and Reggie's family and friends are going through right now.
Yeah, he was about to leave on Monday to go to Greece, as you mentioned. Kelvin Sampson's statement, up on Twitter, was phenomenal. In fact, brings goosebumps. The ultimate teammate. He was the identity of Cougar basketball's culture, a winner. And then thank you, God, for allowing Reggie to come into our lives. And that's a lot of what you just explained yourself.
For Senior Day back in March, the announcer at the Fertitta Center, when he introduced him, his words were, "Nobody who's a Cougar can claim to be tougher than Reggie Chaney," and that's sort of what he was. He was that guy in the front court, and he, people don't realize that he played in 100 and I believe it was 60 something games in his career, about 120 something at Houston. And he played hurt a lot of the times. I remember there was one summer where he had 2 surgeries on his hand because he had essentially broken his knuckles. But then you see the picture of him at graduation with Kelvin Sampson, and Reggie sticks out that same hand, and he's got these 4 gigantic championship rings on that same knuckle. And you're thinking, okay, that just shows you what this kid went through and how he wasn't going to miss it. And, the lasting image I'll have, we were in the locker room in Kansas City when they got knocked out in the Sweet 16 a few months ago. And he said, look, the loss isn't what's getting me. It's the fact that I will no longer play with these guys again. I will never put on this uniform again. That's what matters to me. And that sort of summed up a guy who he didn't start off at Houston, but he quickly became one of them. And they're not going to ever forget that or him.
I called you initially, Joseph, to discuss football, and it almost seemed like that's probably not even a very good idea. But there was the Donovan Smith decision, which was not a surprise as a starting quarterback. Was that just a done deal from day one, or was there a little bit of competition there?
I think back to Major Applewhite's first year, and, they had a guy named De'Aaron King who everybody knew he was the starter, but they go through the process. They want that edge to stay there through the spring, early in camp. They say competition breeds, the success part of it, and they don't want anyone to feel like the job's theirs and you can sort of coach. Not that Donovan Smith was going to do that, but I think Dana's idea was to go through the spring, give Lucas Coley a chance to show where he's at. And maybe a week or two into the camp is when I think they finally realized, we've got our guy. Let's go ahead and make this announcement. Dana wasn't originally going to make an announcement until the week of the opener, but something must have changed to the point where he's like, look, our team knows it, we know it. Why don't we let everybody else know it? But no, to answer your question, there was a reason they went out and got him in the transfer portal. He was the guy to replace Clayton Tune, and luckily for Houston, it worked out that way because sometimes, it doesn't work out. But they got their guy, and they're comfortable with it. But they also know that they got to have a number 2 ready because there have been times recently where Houston has needed that number 2. And if you look at, I believe there's a stat out there, only Houston and UTSA with Frank Harris, those were the only 2 FBS schools last year to go the entire season with the same starting quarterback for every game.
Joseph, we've talked so much about the hype of, just joining the Big 12 this first season. We've heard from Dana Holgorsen. He thinks they're going to be better than people expect. But what would you say, just boiling it down, is kind of the majority, Houston fan opinion on what they're expecting from the program this season?
That's a good question because 1 minute it's hot and the next minute it's cold and, the excitement's there. Now, this is something they've waited for as a fan base, and they're completely behind the program. But there's always that eye that's, I'll take a Chris Pesman line from your show last week, that side eye, that he mentioned. There's always that level of skepticism about, okay, what is this program going to be like? And overall, the feeling is that if they can get to that 6 wins, that they can get to a bowl game, that's success. That will be a step in the right direction. Can they do that? I'm looking at it, and I think between 4 and 6 wins is where, many have projected them. But I think for them to get to that, you got to get off to a good start. You have to be, 3-1 after that non-conference schedule in TCU, and then you gotta get something out of your defense. You got to be able to show an improvement in that area.
Yeah, even their non-conference games could be sticky because we know with Jeff Traylor and UTSA, they've had a great, like a mini series with UTSA and Houston anyway. Sam Houston, I know they're moving into Division I really for the first time, but they're a good football program. They redshirted a ton of players last year, Joseph, as you know, so they could basically just take not a beating, but take it one for the team, so everybody would be back for this year.
No, you're right, and they're looking at the schedule and they're not going to sneak up on anybody. I remember having a conversation with somebody in Houston where in the American at least you had one game here and there that was a layup, so to speak. You're not going to get that in the Big 12, and if you look at their non-conference schedule, UTSA took them to triple overtime last year. They have the experienced quarterback. Rice was on the final drive, had a chance to tie and win that game. And then, like you mentioned, Sam Houston is a school that, from an FCS pedigree, they have been among the best in the country. And C.C. Keller has done a great job there. And before him, whether it was Willie Fritz, and I remember going back to Ron Randleman's days, that's a program that, you look at it on paper, you think Houston should win. It's at home. But you gotta watch those games because if they're not a trap game, you also go into the heart of your schedule. Right after that, you have Texas Tech and a couple of others, and you can't be banged up. You can't afford some big injuries. So there's a lot on the line for Houston throughout every game this season. But that first month is by no means going to be an easy stretch for them.
Joseph, thank you very much. Wish we had much more positive to discuss, but the life of Reggie Chaney seems to be absolutely what he brought to Houston, brought to so many lives. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you soon. The Big 12 in the season about to begin right around the corner. Joseph Duarte with the Houston Chronicle with us on 365 Sports. We're going to hear from Brian Murphy momentarily from WRAL-TV in Raleigh, North Carolina, his thoughts about where everything might be with the ACC.
So, sad news. I mean, awful when you have someone that young, that promising of a life to just have the lights switch off for whatever reason that may be. I guess they're still figuring all that out. It doesn't really matter. It's just sad regardless that, a person who lit up rooms and lit up lives and obviously had a lot of talent as well in addition to that, just is gone. And, to think that, like Joseph's just covering him a few months ago, seeing him, talking to him in a locker room or whatever, and having no idea at the time that, 4 months later that guy's going to be gone. So, that happens to people in life. It's just kind of the way it goes sometimes, but doesn't make it any less tragic, and certainly a tragedy.
It was and is. And Kelvin Sampson's, again, his statement, the image they put up with Houston basketball was one that will take your breath away. We're now joined by Brian Murphy, WRAL investigative reporter, works for a station in Raleigh, North Carolina, covers more than the ACC, but earlier today had a note about that the call was canceled from earlier today. Brian, I know that there's nothing breaking on this, and you said you may not have much, but is this going to end up ever having an end date where something has to happen by a certain time or not with the ACC and anyone else like Cal or Stanford?
Well, I think Cal and Stanford are going to have to make a decision probably before the ACC does. There's been a lot of reporting out there that North Carolina, North Carolina State, Clemson, and Florida State are opposed to adding those schools, and nothing I've heard from North Carolina has indicated that reporting is wrong. And today, the women's soccer coach at North Carolina, who's won the World Cup with the U.S. and won 21 national titles, came out and basically said he doesn't want to see Stanford and Cal added, and he holds a little more sway than a typical women's soccer coach. So, I think the battle lines are kind of hardening on this, and I imagine that Cal and Stanford are going to have to start making other plans.
So, Brian, I guess there was supposed to be a meeting this morning. Is that correct? And any word on just kind of what happened with that as people are –
No, it was canceled.
I know, but why?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Is there word on why that was canceled, Brian?
Sorry about that.
My understanding is they have a regularly scheduled meeting among the CEOs of the school presidents every 2 weeks, and that it's not uncommon for that meeting to get canceled, and this one was canceled.
Okay.
So there was some sense that this was a specially called meeting, that they were going to vote today. I didn't have any indication of that. Checked in to see what happened at the meeting and was told it was canceled, and told that it often gets canceled. This is something that Jim Phillips actually mentioned during ACC Media Days, that they have a standing meeting on the calendar, because I think he felt that maybe there was a lack of communication happening. So they have a standing meeting on the calendar. If they don't have anything to discuss, it gets canceled. So
okay,
you can read into that what you will, I guess.
So you mentioned North Carolina. I saw the comment from the soccer coach. That was you talk about just truth serum. That's exactly how he feels. I'm sure some will get offended because everybody is now, but I love the comments about what he said, that he would then have to recruit against Stanford even more so. And because of who they are and what they represent, that would actually be bringing them into North Carolina's backyard.
Yeah, Stanford's been a very good women's soccer program. The ACC has been really good between North Carolina and Florida State and some others. And he said basically, why are we going to help them out? They're tough enough to recruit against already. Why are we going to help them out? And if they're not as good, then we're going to get better players. He also talked about, from the commissioner standpoint, he understands. You're adding Cal and Stanford, two great academic schools, two great athletic schools. But he said for us, for the boots on the ground, and I think he was talking about coaches and players, said, it's going to make our life more difficult. It's going to cost us more money to fly out there. And when it comes to recruiting, we're opening the door for these two West Coast programs to get up and down the Eastern Seaboard. Why would we do that? It's a self-interested answer, but I haven't seen, as you said, truth serum. I haven't seen many coaches talk like that about realignment.
Brian Murphy, WRAL TV out of Raleigh with us on the ACC. So we know Florida State, Clemson, you mentioned them. North Carolina obviously just made it as a coach what he thought. What's on with NC State? Is that kind of in the same realm of what they think when it comes to anyone being added to the conference?
I tried to get both their athletic director and their school president in the last week to chat about this, and neither one wanted to. There is a sense here in North Carolina and maybe around the league that their fates are kind of tied together. North Carolina and North Carolina State, they're governed by the same board of governors here in the state. NC State has gained in power and influence among sort of lawmakers and people on that board. And there's a sense that if they stick with North Carolina on these matters, on these conference matters, that maybe they're going to stick together when it comes time to go somewhere, or that maybe both of them will get a soft landing spot. I don't know if it's as nakedly self-interested as that, but North Carolina State has the same qualms that North Carolina would have. That's, you're adding two very good schools. You're going to make life a lot tougher. The money to travel out there. And what do they really add, especially from a football standpoint? Not a whole lot. So, I think I can understand why everybody has sort of taken the positions that they've taken on this.
Brian, with Florida State jumped out like they did and said what they said, even in a public setting, they were there was a large bark. And yet when it came time, there's nothing they could do at this particular time. Is that just another year or 8 or 9 months go by and they start barking again and hope somebody else latches on with them? Or is that really just a dead issue with what they can do?
I have no doubt that other schools in the ACC kind of feel the way they do. But everyone's kind of chosen their different paths as to how they're going to deal with it. I have no doubt that Clemson, echoes many of the same sentiments as Florida State. But, Clemson's been in the league since it started. And they maybe feel a different kinship to the ACC that Florida State does. And so they're handling their business, much quieter. And North Carolina is obviously a linchpin member of the ACC and a charter member. They're certainly exploring their options, but I don't think that they're going to publicly, shame the ACC the way that Florida State does. Why Florida State feels comfortable doing that is kind of beyond me. I wonder if the political pressures on Florida State are a little bit different, with Florida, being in the SEC and things like that. But it's certainly not the way that I think a lot of the ACC schools would prefer that they handle their business. I think they understand their frustrations, but I'm not sure it helps anyone. Who does it help to have a school, an important school in your conference out there just constantly bashing the league and saying we don't have enough money? And it's really turned off a lot of ACC fans who say you actually have the most money in the ACC. They have spent the most money in the ACC over the last decade. They don't really have the results to back it up. But I think Florida State is looking for unequal revenue distribution, and if they can get that in the ACC, great. And if this helps get them out of the ACC, even better.
Brian, thanks for your time. We appreciate you jumping on with us. Good luck watching and following that, however long, if it does even last much longer. Appreciate your time today.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, Brian Murphy, WRAL TV. I like the comment that Stanford and Cal will probably have to make the decision before the ACC does, because it doesn't appear as if they ever will, at least not in this particular time period.
Yeah, and North Carolina soccer coach, I appreciate, he said, I appreciate, when talking to the reporters, being able to respond to the question because he knew that the ACC commissioner was in favor of the idea of adding the programs. He said that he had read a statement from the commissioner, and he complimented them and said they're phenomenal schools with great sports programs and academics, but this will be horrible for us with boots on the ground. Our budgets are extraordinary, and now we would try to add in flights across the country to play these two schools, which would be incredibly expensive. And, just let it be known that he would not be in favor of the idea that it would be horrible for schools like North Carolina, and it would just benefit them, talking about Stanford and Cal, not us. And I'm with him. I really don't love the idea of it, and it's not because I'm rooting against the Pac schools that are remaining in any way. I mean, I hope that they all find spots. I hope that all gets settled so that we can focus on something else. So I would love nothing more than them to just find a spot wherever that may be to bring that chapter to a close, and everybody could kind of know what's what, and then we can all shift our focus, directly onto the ACC for the time being or whatever. But I just don't love the idea from just a fan point of view. Like, I mean, even telling me like, oh, you got Cal and Stanford. Like, what does that do for me if I'm Wake Forest guy or, FSU guy? That does not. So we get maybe a West Coast road trip once a year to play football, and maybe, we get to go out west to play basketball, which, I mean, how many people truly travel with the basketball team, college-wise on a regular basis? Like, how many people can even afford to do something like that? So, I guess the prospects of maybe going out west, more than you were before once or twice is cool. I mean, I get it. It's not about fan interest. It's not about that. It's never been about that. It's about what makes money. But I still find it hard to believe they're making enough money to make it matter, to make the whole point of it matter in the end. I just don't see where it adds up and makes all of it worth it. So I'm eager to get a conclusion here. One of the things like the meeting this morning, they called it off because, as he said, there's apparently just nothing to it. But you would have thought like, oh, man, here's this. And so we did that with the Big 12. Remember
all those Colorado board meetings?
There was a lot of those before there was one that actually mattered. And so you could say, and this is not, a knock in any way, but you can say it 100 times and you only have to be right the one time, right?
Yep.
And I just don't want to fall into that with the ACC where every time there's a board meeting, it's like, oh my God, watch out. And I know it's not that big of a deal. It's really not. If you want to pay attention, don't pay attention to it, but don't sit out there and throw it out there as like a little bit of a lure and then, balk when somebody's like, that's not anything, because you're mentioning it for a reason, right? And so all eyes are on every board meeting now that comes out of the ACC for better or worse, and I just hope one of those actually means something one way or the other sooner rather than later so that we don't go the route of the Big 12 times 10 where you have a conference influx, but one that also has a deal that lasts for another 13 years on it or wherever we are now with 12, 13, 14 years left on it, because that's going to – especially with football season starting, that's going to be major fatigue for even the hardcore realignment folks. I mean, that's a saga with that contract length. So something major needs to shift to make that matter.
And I do think that no matter what, even if they start off well, I do think that Florida State has a little bit of a target on their back among some of the teams. That doesn't mean they beat Florida State, but it's almost like they are now the villain, and they don't give a damn. They're fine with that if it allows them to get what they want at some point sooner rather than 2036. When we come back, we're not done. We'll hear from Chris Lovell. He covers Texas Tech on the Red Raiders. Mack Rhoades, Baylor AD, At 4:20, we have Off the Radar. John Kurtz, Kansas State, KC Sports Network today at 5:10 and more. And this is 365 Sports.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. And if you can't make it to Riverbend, DoorDash is available to bring it to you. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old, and they come every 6 months, and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Here we go, this 4 o'clock hour. Paul out until tomorrow. Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak. This is 365 Sports. Joined by Chris Level, Red Raider color analyst, broadcaster, also at Texas Tech and also with RedRaidersports.com. Chris, thanks for your time. We're trying to decide, is Texas Tech on the radar in the Big 12, but are they on the radar, in your opinion, nationally?
Yeah, I mean, boy, there's lots of opinions out there. I think there's a lot of people that think they need to be on the radar for whatever that may be, and then there's a lot of people going, "Hey, tap the brakes!" Like they haven't. They won 8 games last year. Let's slow down, whether it be the conference or nationally. I think they have a lot back. I think they have a lot of momentum. I think there is plenty of reason to question it all, too. Can the quarterback stay healthy? Can they win close games again this year? They haven't done it before, and so it's all fair. But I think they are probably a dark horse for the Big 12
title. But I think that some people feel like maybe there's this TCU thing that they could kind of go on a run and maybe have an outside chance at the playoff. But that, man, I don't know if we'll ever see, the TCU thing again, anytime soon, because they had and you guys saw it firsthand there in Waco. We had so many games like that where if it didn't go their way, they stayed relatively healthy. So I just don't know if that is quite possible. I think that realistically around here, you're simply just trying to see if you can get to Arlington and then see where that takes you. And if you do get to Arlington, you're probably in the mix for, something, whether it's the Big Six Bowl or the playoff or whatever.
Chris, if they don't live up to whatever expectations there are, just positive expectations, at least, matching next year, you mentioned just not winning the close games could be a reason why, or health. But is there anything personnel-wise? Is there a particular position group that they're, not as sure about, or are they pretty loaded across the board from what you can tell?
The way I would answer that question is I think the strength of their team is lack of weakness, in that they really have depth and starters everywhere. I mean, it's so much is back. I mean, they lost Tyree Wilson, okay, their best player. Make no mistake, he was a stud. However, it's worth mentioning they did win. I guess he got hurt. They went on that 4-game winning streak to finish the season. He got hurt in that first of that 4 games, and he didn't play in the other 3. And I think other guys stepped up and played well. I think that Sir Roderick Thompson's not going to be easy to place. He was just a guy that found the end zone all the time. And they graduated a kicker that I thought a lot of. He was 21 of 25. Kicker sounds funny to have in this conversation, but Trey Wolf is in the Titans camp right now. He played a vital role last year. They've got an experienced guy in here that did it at Houston Baptist and all those things. But if he doesn't make, those makeable kicks and kick make those clutch kicks, you don't beat Texas last year. You don't beat Houston. There were just several different, clutch kicks that he made. And so I hate to say kicker, but that is clearly something that I think factors in here. And then the other spot on paper anyway is inside linebacker. They graduated both of those guys, Costa Eldridge and Krishawn Merriweather, that were very productive, very healthy, kind of steady all season long. And they're having to replace those guys. But that's as good as I can offer up on paper. Now, I would say to you, I do think a question that I have personally, do they have enough star power to make it to the conference championship game and things like that? They may have it. We just don't necessarily know who that is yet. But I don't think there's a Deuce Vaughn or a Quentin Johnston that's emerged on this team just yet. And maybe Tyler Shuck can be that guy if he can stay healthy. I don't know, but I think it's a fair criticism for the kinds of conversations we're having.
Was Tyler Shuck at the end who Tyler Shuck was thought to be?
Yeah, David, I think he was he's won the job here 3 years in a row. It's well documented. He's 8-1 as a starter in games that he started. The one loss was when he went out I think it was the end of the first quarter for early second when he broke his collarbone in Austin. When he's healthy, he's really good. It's just he just can't. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. And I think you're wanting to see what life would look like if he can play, 11, 12, or 13 games, because I think he'll like the results. And he's a little taller than 6'3", about 235. I think NFL folks, they love him, but they want to see the same thing we're talking about here. Can you be durable enough, and accurate enough and consistent enough? Because we haven't seen, a big body of work just yet. But he's got all the measurables. He treats this, college right now like he's a pro already. He's up there all the time. I mean, he's just, he's a 23, 24-year-old kid, and I think he's really treating in this thing like a professional opportunity to try to get to the next level. But again, got to stay healthy.
Chris, your thoughts about the timeline as the season begins, the Micah Hudson watch. We know all about the recruitment, Tech, UT. Where would you say, and I'm not going to, if it was a 100% pie, how much of that pie do you think trends towards Lubbock or Austin?
I think he's going to wait. I think that he probably knows where he's going to go. I mean, obviously, if you talk to people up here they feel good about it. I'm sure that they feel good about the things in Austin. And I think there was a time when the folks at A&M felt really good about things as well, because I think there was some rumors that, there was this A&M get-together and this Tech get-together on the same day about a month ago, right before camp started and all those things. And people were in both places were reporting he was going to end up at their place that weekend. He was up in Lubbock, obviously. But I think he's going to wait to decide where maybe it kind of impacts the recruiting class. I think he may, if he's a Tech commit, I think he'll be one of the last guys to commit to their class just to kind of put a bow on it. If it's Texas, I think it'll go down the wire, and he may see what he wants to see there. But I would say, again, it's hard for me to answer that question because I'm only getting one side of the story.
Sure.
But I may go 70-30, 80-20 in favor of Texas Tech there.
Chris, what have you made of the realignment landscape and the Big 12's heavy involvement over the last couple of years, and just what came out of that a couple of weeks ago with the Pac-12 schools deciding? I mentioned it to Kirby Hocutt of Texas Tech was at one point the westernmost school, and now they got 5 schools, I think, that are going to be farther west in the U.S. But your thoughts just from the Tech point of view, your own point of view as a guy who's watched the Big 12 a long time on the conference changes?
Yeah, I will tell you that I think we all – I will be the first one to tell you I missed the first version of the Big 12. That was my favorite. I think that was a great league. I get why it's not together anymore. But considering all the trials and tribulations schools like Baylor and Tech and everybody else have kind of gone through, not really sure how things were going to shake out, I think you've done really well here. You're not in the best league. You're not in the second best league financially or otherwise, but I love the geographic fit. I'm going to miss some of the regional rivalries that we're not going to get anymore. I mean, Texas Tech is, I think Tech and Baylor and Tech and TCU and Tech and Oklahoma State, they've got to play every year going forward in everything, because that's as close as you're going to get to anything meaningful, regionally. And that kind of is sad. I mean, there's no more Texas or Oklahoma or Arkansas or anything like that on anybody's schedules anymore. And I think that's disappointing, that there's no more Bedlam, stuff like that. But considering what you had to work with, I think Bob Bowlesby / Brett Yormark hit a home run. I think that they've, I think a lot of it fits. I think that you don't have to go to the far West Coast and play games at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. I think that it's going to create some revenue here to where it creates some relevancy going forward. I think you can do some things with it. I think basketball got better, not worse. And now I'm sitting back and I'm kind of fascinated at what happens next in that. How do they schedule this deal? We doing pods? We doing divisions? I mean, that's to me is as important as anything on how they're going to decide football. And then basketball wise, same deal, but there's a lot to work with. I love what they were able to do, and I think Brett Yormark even said this was the dream scenario. This is what we were all kind of, privately rooting for, because you knew you had kind of won. If something like this happens, your league is going to be okay, and you kind of got who you wanted, and I think they largely did that.
Go ahead. It's amazing because it's been there 2 or 3 times where they were on the other side of it, where the Pac-12 was, and survived, and actually survived. So then to come out of it the way they are. The one thing about the uniqueness of the Big 12 is everybody played everybody in football. I know that's gone. And I saw Scott Drew last night, and he said, you knew you were going to play everybody twice. In Lubbock, home against Texas Tech. And that he's going to miss that too, and he's interested on how the schedule might be formulated, because you could get an uneven schedule that way based on the algorithms.
Well, I mean, we remember the Big 12 North and South. I think if you were in the South in football anyway, it was extremely lopsided. Iowa State at the time wasn't very good. Kansas wasn't very good. I mean, it was extremely lopsided. So if you finished second or third or fourth in the Big 12 South in some years, you were really second or third or fourth in the league. And it kind of gave you a weird championship game between the North and the South. And so I don't know what I kind of hope that they do, the pod thing where they kind of smaller groups and there's more crossover games. Because I think it's really dumb that the SEC and the Big Ten some of these schools are playing each other every 4 or 8 years. I just think that's ludicrous to me.
Me too.
You don't even feel like you're in the same league as those schools, and I think it's, they all need to, every other year, there's got to be something where you're playing all these schools in a semi-regular basis. But again, I get the point of we want to put our best position and foot forward on trying to get our team, our champion, to the league title game too. So hopefully there's a happy medium there where they can find it. And I will miss the round robin in football and basketball as much as anybody. It was as clean a way to figure out who the best was as anything out there. And that is lost. So those are some of the things that are kind of sad by what has happened with realignment. But hey, man, them's the apples.
Chris, I wanted to ask about one player in particular, as shifting back to football real quick. Jeron Bradley, who had a monster year last year. I know they got a lot of, young, talented guys on offense, but just what's kind of the expectation for the next step for him, would you say?
Yeah, he's, obviously first team all conference, and I think there is a next step that he needs to take. I think if he does that, he maybe has a chance to have a decision to make at the end of this year, whether he wants to stay here or not. I think, he's got the measurable component. He's 6'5", 215, 220. I think speed has always been a bit of just pure speed. He plays the position really big. So it's one of those throw it up and he will go get it. But he's got I think consistency is where he needs to be better. I think that he really turned it on last year. I think the last 3 games of the season, he had 260 yards receiving, and in the 4 or 5 previous, he had like 110. So he really turned it on at the end of the year, and it equaled a good year, and he's a red zone threat, but it needs to be consistent game in and game out. That's what the NFL folks would want to see. But he's one of these guys. Maybe he is got it in him to where he kind of emerges as a Quentin Johnston type or Xavier Worthy or somebody that can win you a game or take it over. But we just haven't quite seen that yet. But they're going to need somebody, and maybe plural, to kind of do that if they want to get to where they want to go. But he would be a prime candidate for that.
Man, we appreciate it. Thank you very much, Chris Level, Red Raider Sports. We hope to have you on during the season. Texas Tech in their first game at Wyoming. And then, of course, their home game against Oregon, Tyler Shuck reunion against the Ducks in Lubbock, Texas Tech and Oregon game 2.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about Jeron Bradley because he, was their leading receiver last year, a young guy though, and because of his profile and his ability, is just an interesting figure to watch for the reasons Chris mentioned. I mean, if he has a big enough year, in theory, he could potentially test the draft waters, but then again, he'd have to have a big year, and he had a big close, but there's just a lot of unfulfilled potential still there because, it's not like he's played for 4 years, he's still a young guy. So just curious about how much better he can get and what that could look like for them. But they've got a lot of weapons. They obviously feel great about Shuck. It's interesting. I wanted to ask him, but I know we had to go about just had he ever called a game at Wyoming before, much less the season opener for Texas Tech. So that's a unique.
That's a place that about once every 6 to 8 years they'll pop somebody.
Yeah. So that's a unique opener for them. That typically, would be a game at home at Jones and opening that bad boy up that way. But instead, that Oregon game in week number 2 will be a massive home opener. So interesting first couple of weeks for them. And you can tell there's just a lot of excitement and there's a lot of belief. And I think anything less than, pretty close to what they did last year would be kind of the baseline, not to get too crazy, but, that was a heck of a start. And we're really only getting started. So, yeah, there's huge expectations there now, and there's not really backing down from that, which I think is the interesting part. You might hear like a little of just chill out a little bit, but they're not like, no, we're not overhyped or we're not, we don't mind being called a sleeper. They're fully embracing it, and I think that just speaks to the confidence they have that, yeah, they're going to be pretty freaking good this year, if not competing for the Big 12 in the championship game.
When we come back, Baylor's Director of Athletics, Mack Rhoades, and this is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on. They're the people that I've counted on a couple of different occasions when I've needed work on my car. But right now they're getting work done over at the dealership, more specifically the road right in front of the dealership. There's a lot of construction going on as they're expanding Highway 6. So since it's not easier to get to them than it normally would be, they're trying to make your effort worth it and make buying a car easier. Right now, all that construction, right behind that, they've got the 2023 GMC Sierra 1500s that are discounted thousands of dollars, and qualified buyers can finance for 0.9% financing. There are dozens of Sierras on the lot. They've got the inventory, the pricing, and the financing to get you in a new GMC Sierra today over at Richard Carr. They've also got the #1 overall brand for new vehicle quality, rated by J.D. Powers, in the Buick lineup of luxury SUVs without the luxury price. Right now, save $3,250 on a new 2023 Buick Encore GX, and qualified buyers can also get 1.9% financing and no payments until 2024. They also have a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks as well if you're not looking to buy new. Several different types of pre-owned cars and trucks and SUVs in stock, many of them under $25,000. And their financing philosophy, as always, is 100% credit approval. They say yes when others say no. If you're not looking to buy a car or looking to get your car worked on, you can check out their award-winning service department, standing by to keep you on the road to service your car or truck. Again, the people you can count on in business for over 24 years in Central Texas. During that time, those couple of decades plus, they built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Richard Carr, run by proud Central Texans, proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes, cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Welcome back to 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Our weekly segment with Baylor Director of Athletics, Mack Rhoades, is brought to you by Edward Jones Investment Brokers, Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, Cam Heathcott, and Chuck Verno. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Baylor Director of Athletics, Mack Rhoades, with us. David Smoak and Craig Smoak on 365 Sports. So I have to start with this. It was great to see you last night. Have you played Connect Four prior? Did you play last night in the tournament, the Connect Four tournament?
No, I sat out the tournament, but there was a big competition with men's basketball when we were in Indianapolis, and we ended up winning the national championship. So in the bubble, there was a Connect Four tournament within in the basketball program. So that was my first experience playing. I'm disappointed to say, and probably proud to say, all at the same time, that I lost in the quarterfinals to Davian Mitchell.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. Yeah, well,
yeah,
he plays good defense when you were trying to be offensive with that game. Last night, Scott Drew beat me. I guess it took him longer than maybe most people thought. I don't know who won it all last night, but that was kind of fun. That's a very, very fun game to play. I'd never played it before, but I was kind of curious about that. All right, so yeah.
So let me since you put it out there, Scott ended up winning the championship. He beat Nicky in the Final Four. Now, I don't recall Scott winning the championship in the bubble. I think that was actually Davion that went on to win the championship. So, but it was a good night last night for Scott Drew.
How often do you still think about just that time period in the bubble? I remember coming off of it. Obviously, the ending was as super, storybook as you could get. But I recall you fondly reminiscing on just that time period and how unique that was. Do you revisit that in your head very often at all?
It's interesting that you asked that, Craig, because just this past weekend, Commissioner Yormark was asking me about it. And so it was really cool just to reminisce again and think fondly about it. And certainly, obviously the championship was incredibly special. But, man, the time spent with the student athletes, with all of the staff, the coaches, etc., the managers, the GA, just all of it was an incredibly special time, and it was unique because you were there, in a hotel with other teams and being able to connect with them, and this is a large industry, but it's a small industry, and if you've been in it long enough, you meet some wonderful people along the way, and so. That was really a cool time to just get to connect with some people that you hadn't seen or been able to visit with in a while. So really, really a special time.
Of my 43 years in this business covering events, maybe my first Super Bowl was obviously going to be special. But I got to tell you, that week, and I was there, and I stayed at a hotel, had a suite and all that. Just a regular, nice place, but that was incredible. The way that city, Indianapolis, was able to make all that work, to me, was maybe didn't get enough credit.
Yeah, I agree. I thought, the city of Indianapolis did an unbelievable job. I thought, Danny Gavitt, vice president for basketball, was brilliant, him and his staff, and just the way they pulled that off. And again, that, is probably, an event that, or the way that event played out, probably will never happen again. At least I hope it doesn't, because of a pandemic. But it was just a really, really special time. And, I think about Coach Brooks and spending, him being able to spend time, with his dad, who at the time was on the Houston staff before our game, when we played them in the Final Four. So there's a lot of stories like that. And so, it will be, when I eventually retire from this business, I can guarantee you that's going to be, one of the top 5 most special memories that I will have.
So I've known this for a couple of weeks and was trying to just make sure I had all of this correct. You guys are Nike. I believe there was a shoe line that was released, but perhaps Baylor was not a part of that. And then also you're trying to maybe look outside the box a little bit with an alternate, football or other sports uniforms that might be, I don't know, anthracite or something like that. Where is all that in play right now?
Yeah, so, Nike has been, a great partner. And, I'll take you back to, what was it, 7 years ago? My first 3 days, within my first 3 days, we did not have, Baylor did not have an all sports deal, right? We had some sports with Nike, and we had some other sports, at least 6 other sports with another apparel company, shoe company. And literally within 3 days, that other company, called me and told me they were dropping us because of everything that had happened. And so we really had no options at all. And so I reached out to Kit at Nike, who I'd known and had just gone through a deal with them at Missouri. And, Nike decided to enter into an all sport agreement with us. And again, we had no leverage. We had nobody else. And the agreement that we ended up signing with Nike was very similar, if not maybe even a little bit better than the Missouri agreement. And so I'll forever be grateful to Nike because they took a chance on us when nobody else would. And so they've been a great partner. And then, shortly thereafter, they do not do this with all of their schools, but, we went through the branding exercise and the new logo and the colors and all of that. So, they've been a terrific partner. And so, their footwear program, we certainly understand, the level of interest from Baylor fans. And we've communicated, believe me, we've communicated that to our to Nike over the past few years. There's a couple fans that I really would have liked for them to call Nike directly. But Nike has certainly, responded positively and they certainly see the value of Baylor being part of the footwear program. And so it's something that, it's not going to happen today, but it's something we are mutually working toward. And there's some nuances without getting into all the contractual things that I can't disclose, but there's a timing component of when, we're able to do all of this and certainly, the aspects of this agreement. So, we know, 2 things. One, our fans will deliver when it comes to shoe sales if Baylor is added. And I also know this, the Pegasus shoe, which I run in every day, would look really, really good in green and gold. So, well, it will happen. And we're working on it. And, we've had conversations about some additional colors. And so all of those are things that, again, we're having or in conversation with Nike. And, I go back to, they didn't have to sign a multi-year long-term contract with us. And certainly could have signed it, pennies on the dollar, and they did not. And so just, really grateful to them and the fact that they took a chance on us.
When you called them during that time, and of course it was there were thunder clouds and dark clouds everywhere. Did you think they would work with you, or was that something where you weren't sure?
Yeah, I really thought it was a long shot, to be honest with you. And I think maybe the appropriate way to describe it is I maybe didn't call them, I begged them. And that was an interesting time within the first 3 deals. First 3 days, I got that phone call. By the way, that other apparel company, the vice president was a friend of mine. And,
wow.
But that was the decision that they made as a company. And then, within the first 3 days, we had one of our biggest national sponsors, decide not to continue their agreement. So, those were some trying times, and just, grateful to the people that stepped up and believed in us and have stayed with us.
Mack Rhoades, Baylor Director of Athletics, with us on 365 Sports. You have this beautiful pavilion across the Brazos, maybe a quarter of a mile from us. You have the brand new football ops building going up. You're renovating the indoor. I mean, there is a lot going on, and there has been this constant churning of dirt for the longest of time. Where are you when it comes to funds in operation? I know you can't give me specific numbers, but is it a challenge right now to try to meet the demand of all the money you're spending?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I'm as you're asking the question, my mind's racing. How do I, certainly best answer it? And I would say a couple things. One, we're blessed because we've been, financially sound, and certainly in a really good position. My 7 years here. One of the keys, to all of that was, when we went through COVID, and we had a $20 million revenue deficit, just because you weren't playing games in front of full stadiums, et cetera, throughout the entire year. And so we had built up some healthy reserves, and we're able to mitigate that. And so I would say that we were one of the few just across the country that we were able to navigate and get out of that in a really, really good position. What has happened since now is a lot of, things are just getting more expensive. The deregulation, when you think about NCAA, and so the deregulation of food, the deregulation of now more accountable coaches. So no volunteer coaches, more accountable coaches. I think, we added 14 positions. And so you have that, the travel in terms of, what we can do for travel with student athletes. And, that deregulation continues to happen. And then, now all of a sudden you throw name, image, and likeness in NIL into the equation. And so how do you do that without cannibalizing, some other revenue areas, specifically, i.e. the Bear Foundation, which helps offset or covers the cost of scholarships. So all of that is a tug and pull, and then, raising monies, to build the facilities that you talked about. And so I would tell you that operationally, our budget has grown, and it's grown every year, and we've, finished, every year in the black. And so, it's in a good place. But, I think like it's always been, when you think about the Big 12, I would, confidently say that we're in the upper half, but we're certainly not number one or number two. And, we're going to continue to be, be strategic and be really thoughtful about how we spend our monies, where we spend our monies, how we invest them. That, I promise you, that is a daily conversation. And so making sure that our dollar goes, maybe further than anybody else's. And we try to solve problems. I think there's organizations, right, that, the first way they solve a problem is by throwing more money at it. And that's probably opposite of how we do it. And so that's where we're at as a department. I would say that we're in a good place. In the future, as deregulation continues and we think about, TV contracts, discrepancy, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC, all of that. Yeah, that certainly, is on my mind full time. And, how do we continue to navigate that and make sure that we're not surprised and that we can continue to be nationally relevant. So that is a really long answer, and I hope I answered your question.
No, you did, and I know that it's McLean Stadium, and I may have asked you this before. I know what it's like. I know that you had mentioned there would never be, like, for example, if you needed to come up with a way to make more money, there are certain things you don't do at McLean Stadium. For example, selling alcohol, that will never change, will it?
No, that won't ever change. And, it's, we've tried to be thoughtful, and I'll give you an example. For the first 5 years, we didn't increase ticket prices for football. There were, and there are places that increased, every other year or every 3 years. And so, we were thoughtful and careful. Our fans, the Baylor family had experienced a lot, and certainly when I came in, it wasn't a united family whatsoever. And so, we were thoughtful about when and how, and even when we increased the number of games at home, within those first 5 years, we didn't increase prices. We didn't do it with men's or women's basketball. It's the bottom three in the Big 12 when you think about season ticket pricing for both our women's and men's programs. And now that we're going into a new facility, yes, we're increasing ticket prices, but we're not increasing them to the top of the league. We're now we've moved from bottom to mid range, and so we know we're asking our fans, our donors, our season ticket holders, right? We're asking them to do a lot, and we're stretching them, and grateful that they've responded in a really, really positive way. But we know and get and understand we're asking them to do a lot.
Mack, in regards to the playoff, last week you talked about the revisiting that needs to be done because of all of the realignment that's occurred. But I'm sure you're also well aware of the fear that a lot of people have out there that retooling it just means that it's going to benefit the two conferences that seem to benefit the most from most rules changes. From a Big 12 perspective, there's not really any way to strong arm, what you would like to see. But how aware are you guys, as you were also hyper aware of the whole realignment situation this past couple of years, but how aware and how do you kind of protect your interest when it comes to, reopening playoff discussion, but also ensuring that it doesn't leave more people out than there were to begin with?
Yeah, Craig. Appreciate the question. I think I think now that Commissioner Yormark has a year under his belt, I think Brett, I think he'll be probably more vocal and maybe even with the additions of the four Pac-12 schools and being at 16, right? I think his voice will resonate well in the room amongst the the A5 commissioners. President Gee from West Virginia, he is one of my favorites, and he sits on the management council, and so I think he's got a really, really strong voice, and so I think we'll be represented well, and there's the nuance, right, of certainly looking out for the Big 12 and what's best for the Big 12, and at the same time what is best for college football. And so I have great confidence we'll hold our own, and we won't acquiesce to a system that favors a conference more than the other. The reality is, like you said, it's changed, and right now it's the six highest seeded conference champions that have automatic bids, and so that number needs to be tweaked, and how that impacts the rest of it remains to be seen. So they'll get to work at it, and they're going to have to get to work at it sooner rather than later, this fall. But again, I think we'll land in a good place.
Mack, one more thing. I also mentioned about revenue. Has anyone ever approached you, a company, a business, about the naming rights to your football stadium? And has that ever been a discussion you've had with Drayton McClain Jr.?
No, I mean, the name of that stadium will forever remain McClain Stadium, and we won't ever refer to that stadium as anything else. But we've done some outside the box things and ideas, and when we announced the championship partnership with Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, which again, so grateful to Mike, Eric, and that group. But we'll continue to explore all those different areas. I'm proud. I really am. I'm proud of our team of Jeron and her team, and Cody Hall and his team, and everybody that's been involved in terms of revenues. We have had historic revenue gain over the last 6 years, and what's offset that is we've also had historic expenses. I didn't even mention Alston, and that was this past year was the first year that Alston was part of our budget, and that was an additional $2.2 million in terms of monies that were provided to our student athletes, and so we've been able to continue to handle and manage all of the deregulation, and we're going to have to continue to figure out how to do it in the future as well.
If you don't mind me asking you this question, Jen Cohen at Washington is on her way to USC. And I would think that anytime there's an opening for an athletic director position, that someone, not everybody, but most people would want to contact you to get your interest. It brought me to this question. Do you ever, of everyone I've ever talked to about the role you play, not that there aren't other strengths, but that you're a crisis management type guy. Is that something that you always have to have crisis to feel like that you're locked in, or would you ever get bored when things are good?
Yeah, that's a question that I'm just going to be really transparent that I battle and I ask myself all the time. This past August 15th, it's been 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
The longest place, the longest amount of time I've ever been, any one place as an athletic director. And so that's been, I think the internal battle for me, President Livingstone and the Board of Regents have been, so good to Amy and I and my family. And, how do you continue to be relevant? How do you continue to lead when you've been there for, maybe a longer period of time than where you've been at other places? And how do I do it? How do I not become bored? Because I can become bored really, really easy. And, probably, one of my strengths is that, I can have 18 things going on at one time. And one of my weaknesses is that I will have 18 things going on at, one time. And so, I think the constant change, that we're in right now with the NCAA, whether again it's the deregulation, it's the name, image, and likeness. Do we have different tiers coming up here in the future within Division I, and what do you need to be do at the top tier? The whole idea of will we get to a point in time, revenue share with student athletes, employees, all of that. So I think all of that is probably helped those, challenges and sort of crises in front of us that we're gonna have to navigate. But I don't know what it would be like to, be at a place where I guess, you're on cruise control. That's not who I am. It's not how I lead. And so, that's, just been trying to figure that out. And then my role, I've been blessed to be part of the conference stuff. And so, that has also helped as well. So hope I answered it.
Mack, thanks for your time. We appreciate it very much. Mack Rhoades, Baylor Director of Athletics, with us on 365 Sports. And the story yesterday with Jen Cohen, we discussed it. Craig Paul was here. He'll be back tomorrow about Jen Cohen being named and introduced as the AD at USC. She's at Washington. Helped them get to the Big Ten. USC, of course, a year or 13 or 14 months ahead of the schedule. But there is a couple of things about someone like USC when they contact a Mack Rhoades or are interested in a Mack Rhoades or any athletic department in the country, because of what he came into and who he is and what he's done and his role really within the Big 12. He's one of the top 5, I think, paid ADs in the country. He's earned that. Came into a situation that a lot of ADs went, nope, not me. And then on top of that, if you're talking about L.A., the cost of living on top of paying an AD more than he's making now that might be among the top 5 in the country, that's a large bucket of cash. Not that Jen Cohen's not going to make a lot of money. She will. But I think that might have been where USC was interested and then said, man, we just don't think we can go down that road.
Yeah, I mean, these schools are supposed to have all the money in the world, I thought. But no, actually, there are things that, do stop at a certain, level or things that you just can't swing no matter what. And, that's part of the protection that Baylor built in by paying him so much money.
And a buyout.
We can't compare to Los Angeles. We can't compare to maybe bigger schools. We can't compare to bigger alumni bases because it's not like, comparing people. It's just Baylor's not ever going to be Texas A&M. It's just not ever going to be that size and have that alumni base. Same with Texas or Ohio State or whatever other examples you want to use. They, like in various other ways, all of those schools have much bigger advantages, because of their size. And so if you're a smaller school who's trying to compete, close to those same types of levels as best you can, what areas can you invest in heavily that, even those schools would have a problem touching that, and hey, have one of the highest paid athletic directors and make it difficult for anybody to come in and make it worth his while. They did that clearly, and it's paid off because, he's around, as he said, the longest he's ever been somewhere, and looks like he's going to be around a little while longer. So, that maneuvering, I think, worked well in their favor and was smart the way that they decided to, throw another contract extension at him when they didn't necessarily have to, to make it more difficult. So, yeah, I mean, that might have been the difference in him being the AD at USC right now or Jen Cohen being the AD, and maybe not, but it certainly didn't help USC's chances in any way. So, yeah, I think that's nice to have that question answered as far as we never made a big deal out of it. We at least mentioned it, though, because I didn't want to all of a sudden he gets the job and everybody's like, well, why didn't anybody say anything about Mack Rhoades? Because there was mutual interest, at least in hey, would you have any interest whatsoever, more than 0% in this job? Sure, tell me about it. That's, that level of interest was at least there on both ends. So, don't know how, Jen Cohen compared or other candidates or whatever, but, Mack is going to be coveted as long as he's around, and, Baylor holding on to him is a win for them.
Yep, there's no question. A lot of you are saying you could back the truck up. He was getting paid well. Then there was the extension, and there's a large buyout. Now, again, buyouts are what coaches have, too, and people get around that. Roger the Dodger said, so you're saying that USC could not match the money? What I'm saying is that is the first thing that has to happen before there might have even been any kind of legitimate discussion. And because of all of what I put into it, his salary, the buyout, the cost of living, USC probably went, we just can't do that.
Yeah, and then maybe they could have eventually put it all together, but I would say as well is just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean that you just go up any level just to get whatever you want whenever you want to. Here pretty soon that money disparity will matter. The money that USC is making compared to the money that an Oklahoma State or a Baylor are making. And maybe at that point in time, they're paying $10 million for an athletic director or something. But, that remains to be seen. That is, I think, a big part of the worry, however. But everybody's got their limits. Like, how much money are you going to throw at somebody before you're just burning money yourself? And you could have somebody who's maybe as good of a candidate for several $1 million less. I don't know. I mean, they could – we act like these schools can just write blank checks at will, and for the most part, some of them can, but there are barriers in place to where you just don't have a blank check for everything at all times whenever you want to, and I think that's one of those cases here.
And I do think that Jen Cohen at Washington is someone who's also thought of very highly, and they probably, like everybody else, had a list of 3 to 5 names, did their due diligence, realized, hey, this is who we might want, but I don't think we can go there. We need to at least look at I'm not saying Jen Cohen was option number 2. I'm not saying that at all. But look at what they are willing to do, and they ended up still getting a really good athletic director in Jen Cohen at Washington.
If all things were equal, maybe they still have her out front. We don't want to make it sound like they were pursuing Mack and he shot him down. No, just saying that any conversations stalled pretty early because of the money situation. So when you got your big pool of candidates, well, there's one less guy that's at this part of the list, but let's filter through all the rest of them, and that's probably how it really just ended up. Not we wanted him, but we can't afford it. We're not saying that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, Texas Buckeye 1953. Her biggest job, Jen Cohen, will be expanding the sports for the Big Ten with Washington. All right, when we go, a lot of you are excited about USC. Not Washington, but a lot of you that did not quite know that USC had filled that role that were a little bit, because we had mentioned it before that Mack would absolutely be somebody they would call he is, again, locked in at Baylor, and he is someone, and a lot of people are like this. You get bored when you lose challengers or don't have many of in front of you, and he has been, and I've known this, and others have told me this, a crisis management is where he excels. A lot of ADs that are now a part of the Big 12 have told me that too. When we come back, Craig's off the radar a little bit after 5 o'clock. I'll tell you what we'll do, Craig.
It's 4:56,
I know that, but there's a couple of other quarterback jobs that have been announced at Arizona State and also at Oregon State. We can get into that. Also, John Kurtz around the corner on Kansas State and the Big 12. And this is 365 Sports. TexasBeefHouse.com. I'm going to record something later on either today or maybe in the next day or two with, I tell you what, Samantha Duvall. She's fantastic, and a lot of you have spoken with her. Those of you who have ordered, not everybody has had to call or not, I guess, spoken with Samantha Duvall. She handles the marketing. She handles getting the calls. There's others that do too. You can go to TexasBeefHouse.com to get that information. I mentioned this the other day. A retired stockbroker who's been on the chat said that he bought the starter grill pack that had 8 burgers. These are 8 hamburger patties, 5 garlic pieces of sausage, also 2 fillets, 2 strips, 2 big sirloin steaks, and Samantha threw in a summer sausage, all for $139.50, and you can use the code word #Sick'em10, and you get a discounted price, and Samantha will tell you what that is. Sometimes I think it's $10 on your orders. Where is the best beef in Texas? It's your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. There is a farm, a ranch, a Wagyu beef cattle that's right there just outside of Tylerman White House, and they raise amazing product, amazing cattle from their pasture to your plate. TexasBeefHouse.com.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Sausage wrap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is a premier elite life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes every week, including boot camp, indoor cycling, bars, silver sneakers, and more. If you haven't been to Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness lately, you're missing out on the improvements. New flooring in the weight room floor and locker rooms, new paint and mirrors added to the weight room and group exercise room, and many new machines have been added and arriving constantly on the weight room floor. New free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new ellipticals on the spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, Alex Box, and welcome to Nathan Roach, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow. A kids club included with your membership, plus sauna, whirlpool, and tanning vet. 16 tennis courts plus a beautiful stadium court, and longtime youth tennis pro Britt Coleman and assistant junior Kenna. Adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, and the commitment to pickleball with 8 courts and instructor Jody Thurman. Visit the website at wacotennis.com or visit us at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
All right, back here on 365 Sports. Time for some semblance of Off the Radar. A little later than normal, but always around 4:45 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. A segment just stopping down and taking a look at some of the stories going on around college football, but the wider sports world as well. But we'll have some college football in this segment when news dictates, and that is certainly the case today. For example, a lot of starting quarterback jobs being announced today. We touched on a couple of them earlier, but going to have to start, and I pay attention across the country to college football, but going to have to particularly pay attention to several new schools starting now. And so Arizona State announcing a starting quarterback would have been a worthwhile story regardless, but now that they are, going to be in the Big 12 as soon as next year, it's a little bit more on the radar than previously, but there you have it. True freshman Jaden Rashada, one of the NIL poster childs of the early part of the NIL era. A cautionary tale, perhaps his old dalliance with Miami. But regardless, he ended up with the Sun Devils, and he is going to be Kenny Dillingham's starting quarterback, beating out transfer Drew Pine, who comes over from Notre Dame. So from the class of 2023, and now a starting quarterback for the Arizona State Sun Devils, beating out Drew Pine, and they will play Southern Utah on August the 31st. That will be his big debut. Also beat out senior Trenton Bourget as well for that job. So interesting bummer for Drew Pine, huh? Transfer to Arizona State and get beat out by the young gun. But that's only going to, I guess, add more gasoline to the whatever, level of kind of fire with the fan base there was with, Jaden Rashada. That's certainly going to spike now because of this news today. So Jaden Rashada, your starting quarterback there. Elsewhere, also, let's see here. I have to get back to that page right there is where I was trying to go. Also, what were the ones you mentioned earlier?
By the way, Wet Blanket in the chat room said that Pine is hurt.
Okay, well, that makes more sense then. Yeah, thank you for filling that in, that blank, because that definitely makes a lot more sense. But also, who were the ones you had earlier, the starting quarterbacks? I thought you were going to mention those.
Oh, you mentioned Oregon State, DJ.
Yeah, DJ Uiagalelei also named the starter at Oregon State today. So there you have that news, and not a big surprise there. Ben Gulbertson, Aiden Childs, as you see, also competing for the job. But, once he made that transfer out to Corvallis, it seemed like this was going to be the likely outcome. So fun offense, a lot of big expectations for the Beavers this year. And now DJU will be the one pulling the trigger, at least to start the season off with. So another domino falling in the Pac-12 quarterback races there as well. And, very anxious to see what he does, given that, the ending there at Clemson was a little bit rocky just in terms of, what people thought of how he performed and what they considered, versus the expectations with a guy that highly touted. And then obviously Cade Klubnik enters the picture and does what he's capable of doing. And, ultimately is the guy left standing in Clemson. But yeah, DJU with this new opportunity. It'll be very interesting to see both these guys take the field and see what they can do with it. So there's a little bit of starting quarterback news. It also mentioned that Donovan Smith named the starter at Houston as well. That didn't come as a surprise, but just fun to see some of these decisions now being made, even if they're not all that surprising. A couple of other notes, non-college football related here, but coming out of the NFL, had a couple of things that I want to get to. Golly, what is going on here? Seahawks rookie Jackson Smith-Njigba will have wrist surgery, per report earlier today, after getting dinged up in the preseason. He is going to have the wrist surgery. And had it already today in Philadelphia. There is a chance he could be ready for the start of the regular season, but that will all be determined after the fact. And that preseason game he hurt it in was one that was pretty, I guess, bad for both sides, because the Cowboys certainly didn't make it out of that game all that healthy either. So that was a bit of a mash unit there. So Jackson Smith-Njigba caught 6 passes for 83 yards during the preseason. Now the broken bone, as the Seahawks did win that preseason game. We'll see how long he may be out, but there is at least a chance that he could return in time for the beginning of the season. Also, out of the NBA, and I'll just leave it with this so we can move on along, but James Harden fined $100,000 after his rant. Did you see him talking about Daryl Morey the other day at a basketball camp? Very awkward situation. I can't imagine what most people in that room were thinking as he just took the mic and called Daryl Morey a liar. Well, the league launched an investigation that included them talking with James Harden and interviewing him. They confirmed through those that these comments referenced Harden's belief that he would not have his trade request accommodated by the 76ers organization, and therefore Daryl Morey, and that is what led to him calling Morey a liar at the event in China last week. And he doubled down on that, so the NBA in turn has fined him the maximum $100,000. That's the most, as I mentioned the word maximum, that they can fine a player under the collective bargaining agreement. Meanwhile, the Players Association said they will file a grievance to dispute it, But it was pretty clear what he was doing. I mean, it was pretty clear. He wasn't hiding. He took the mic, and he was very matter of fact. So he gets the biggest fine possible there. And there's just a few things off the radar there.
All right, Craig. Sorry it was minimized because of our 4 o'clock hour being slammed. We appreciate the time with our guests, including the recent Mack Rhoades, and a lot about Nike and Baylor and uniforms, alternate, and all of what was going on with that, and also his own philosophy of ever being bored if there's not crisis. And there's always crisis now in collegiate athletics. Also now coming up next, John Kurtz. He covers Kansas State for the KC Sports Network. He's next. This is 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. I can't remember the day, but sometime last week, because of so much that we have on a to-do list, all of us, with football season starting, college next week, eventually the NFL, and this week high school football in Texas. There's just a lot going on, and it's because it's fun. We love it, but it is a very, very cram session for the next couple of weeks. So I had to get some certain things done. And so I called Marco's on the way home. Went by there, picked up my pizza. Normally I have it delivered, picked it up. Glad I did. It was delicious. And I got what I always get. I got the large, thin crust with all meat. I also got one that was medium that I could sneak a little bit of this and that in during the weekend, which had chicken and pepperoni, a little barbecue type of flavor, buffalo type chicken flavor. It was delicious too. Marco's Pizza in Waco. There was a time just a few years ago they had no stores. Fastest growing brand, a pizza brand in the country. 5 locations now in Waco, in Belmead, China Spring, Hewitt, Woodway, and Robinson. Bob Mock, the owner. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
Come shop the greatest selection in Central Texas and save big on Ram trucks during the Make This the Summer event at Allen Samuels in Waco. Get a 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab, 20% off MSRP or 2.9% for 72 months. The choice is yours. Plus, if you're a first responder, you get an extra $500 bonus cash. We've got the inventory and we're making big deals. Hurry in today. They won't last long. Allen Samuels in Waco is the place to shop Ram trucks.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing his time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
Here we go, 365 Sports rolling along in the 5 o'clock hour. Hall of Fame columnist John McClain will join us at the bottom of the show. We're now joined by John Kirk. KC Sports Network has covered and followed the Big 12 quite a bit. Very outspoken as well during a lot of this craziness of realignment, the Big 12, and everything that went with it. John, we'll get into that a little bit later on, but let's discuss K-State. We had Gene Taylor on. He's fantastic, as many of the ADs are and seem to be in the Big 12. But Chris Kleiman, to me, I just love his style. Was he actually, and it's obvious, but when he was hired, was there any is this the right guy, or was it all pretty positive?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's funny you bring that up. I had not thought about that in a long time, but there actually was. The fan base did not like it, I'd say, for the first 24 hours. And then there was a pretty dramatic shift after that where they did a good job of getting the messaging out. I think people sort of calmed down. But it was just simple, falling victim to the same thing that I think a lot of people have throughout the hiring process of why you don't see maybe as many FCS coaches get those sorts of opportunities, or at least you didn't. For a while, it was just those three letters. It was the FCS thing that I think really had people bothered. I think it was that and a combination of that and the fact that it was Gene Taylor's guy from North Dakota State. So a lot of people that would have been skeptical about Gene Taylor and the job he was doing at the time, which looked a little bit different. We had not seen the full picture and full scope of what he's done, which has obviously been fantastic now. But this was back in 2019. He was still much newer on the job. And at that point, people weren't totally sold. And so you had a crowd that still very much was like, I don't know about this AD. And now he's just hiring his guy. This was a very easy hire. Could have made this hire at any point in time. Why go and do this and just bring your boy from the FCS school to K-State? There was a lot of that right after the hire happened, but it turned pretty quickly. I think especially once he came and did a press conference, people listened to him, heard his message out, and started to come around to okay, this seems like a guy that could really resonate with players in 2023 or at the time 2019. Just a really good players coach, incredible culture, and that became really apparent when you heard him talk. All right, I kind of see what this is about. Let's give this a chance. And he started to win people over pretty quickly, and certainly won a lot of people over with that first season where they went 8-4 in the regular season with a roster that was very, very devoid of talent. They did not have a scholarship running back on the roster when he took over, for instance. So to go 8-4, almost 9-3 in that first regular season, I think really got people on board. And now, obviously, he's got complete and total support of everybody and a new contract to boot as well.
So, John, I remember, when Baylor won the Big 12 a couple years back, a lot of people how do you prevent the letdown? And they said all the right things, and then there was absolutely a letdown. There's also a lack of talent in comparison to that team as well. But they admitted a letdown, and that's happened with many others that try to run it back. But when we talked to Chris Kleiman at Big 12 Media Days, how much do you think his experience allows them to truly reset the table and not have to worry as much about, carryover from last year, just assuming things are going to go a similar direction and that it really is a brand new team?
Yeah, it's a really good point because I was about to go there when I started hearing the question. I was like, well, I fully understand, and I think it's a legitimate thing that K-State will have to fight this year. It's just battling a little bit of complacency because of that. I think that's just natural. But if there is ever a guy that you would want as your head coach in that scenario, it's the guy who had to deal with the unbelievable expectations at North Dakota State every single year, where it's national championship or bust, and then had to defend multiple national championships and knows what that is all about. There was not much margin for error at all at North Dakota State every single year that he was operating within that. So I think that will help carry the day. I think they just have such a good culture anyway. I mean, that's the thing that really stands out about the team and program right now all across the board. So I would imagine that is going to really help out as well. And another thing I would throw in there is, well, they are getting a lot of national respect, which honestly has surprised me a little bit. There is still an element, I think, of these guys are going to look around, for instance, on the offense and be like, hey, people think Deuce Vaughn's gone, so the entire offense has changed. I remember seeing an anonymous quote. I think it was the Athlon preview that they did where they take anonymous quotes from Big 12 coaches, and one of them said, like, hey, I love the culture at K-State, love a lot of what's going on there, but I think they're going to figure out that life is a lot more difficult when 22 isn't out there to just take all the attention of the defense even when he doesn't have the ball. So I'd imagine that's probably motivating for a lot of those guys on the offensive side of the ball. Like, hey, we've got to prove that we can do it without Deuce. And on the defensive side of the ball, we've got to prove that we can do it without Felix and Julius Brents, a couple of top 2-round draft picks that were lost off of that defense. So I think there's reason to believe at K-State that would be lessened, like some of that effect would be dulled a little bit compared to where it could be in other spots. But it's very much something that they are going to have to battle this year. I would not even try to pretend that that's not going to be a storyline of the season at all.
I think sometimes when people think about loud crowds and stadiums, et cetera, fan bases, football, there's those that have these massive stadiums and, yeah, I mean, there's 100,000 or 90,000 or 75,000 or so. But I've been to Manhattan. Baylor played there. I was on a road trip one time, and I covered the game. Baylor ended up winning the game on a late pick. But my goodness, in fact, I've been there a couple of different times. That place gets locked in. Can you try to describe game day in Manhattan when there's a big game?
Yeah, well, the first thing that comes to my mind is actually a quote from Art Briles. I remember during his time at Baylor, and I'm trying to remember where exactly that was. That may have been Athlon too, but he had a quote where he said, like, you think he gets loud, try walking your happy you-know-what into Manhattan, Kansas on a game day. And I'm paraphrasing there, but it was something like that. Someone needs to look that up because I'm pretty close on that. And he's right. And, in fact, I remember one of the loudest moments, I would say, like, past Snyder 1.0, like the first time Bill Snyder retired. The loudest I think it's been since then was the 2011 game against Baylor at RG3 that K-State won. It was a really good game back and forth. And so I'm sure that's probably what Art was referencing there in that quote. But, no, I mean, it gets very, very loud. I've been there. Now, I'm still partial to, again, kind of the Snyder 1.0 era. Capacity was slightly smaller back then, but, man, it was really wild back in those days when you had great battles with Nebraska and Oklahoma, and K-State was at the top of the league every single year. But it still does get very, very loud. I think the stadium, especially the way it's built with some of the renovations now, bigger buildings in the north end zone and then the west side of the stadium, it kind of traps the noise in a little bit better. And it's also just one of the best tailgating environments that you're going to find across the league. The parking lot is set up great for it. In fact, they just built a new indoor facility that took out some of the parking spots on the east side of the lot. And boy, you wouldn't believe what kind of a big deal that was to some fans, which I get to an extent, but that was a lot of consternation about that because of the tailgating scene being so good. So it's awesome. And it's really what was so frustrating to me in the whole Big 12, Pac-12 thing, the truck stop conference, people kind of looking down at the league. I'm like, man, come to Waco, come to Manhattan, come to Lubbock, come to Ames, and see what the tailgating environment is like and how loud those stadiums get. Like it's about as good a college football environment as you're going to find. And look, I haven't been to the big boy stadiums in the SEC necessarily, but I've been to Mississippi State to cover a game, and it certainly was a lot better than that. I've also been to Stanford in 2016 when they had Christian McCaffrey, and there were about 8,000 people in the tree there. So I know how much better the Big 12 environments are than that. K-State certainly fits right in with that. It's a really passionate fan base and just an awesome, awesome environment.
Yeah, Spencer Hall asked Art Briles, Big 12 Stadium, most intense atmosphere, and he said, right when you said it, I thought Manhattan, Kansas, you want to stand next to someone and not be able to hear them walk your ass into Manhattan, Kansas. That was the exact quote.
There we go. I feel like I was close. I got 50% of the way there. Yeah.
So as somebody who covers a team, you obviously have a different perspective than those who, follow closely but aren't necessarily boots on the ground day to day. That's just the case with anybody who's that close to it like we would be with, the Bears, for example. What is the biggest question you have about K-State entering this season?
Yeah, I frame it up like this. I think the depth of the program is in a place that it hasn't been since probably, I suppose, like the 2012 team. I think just in terms of the way they've been recruiting here over the last 3 or 4 years, Kleiman has slowly raised that profile. It's not like you're going to go look at the recruiting rankings and be like, oh, man, they've been putting together top 10 classes. It's not anything like that. But, I mean, by the end of Bill Snyder's second run, and this is not meant to really run him down, it's just the reality of the situation, they were recruiting classes full of guys that not only were just like 2 and 3 stars, but did not really have many other Power 5 offers. And now they're beating out lots of Power 5 competition. They've landed guys like Avery Johnson, who's going to be next in line at quarterback, who was a real national recruit there. And they've had a handful of guys who have been borderline like national recruits that they've been able to pull in, which is just a huge step in the right direction for a program that's always been about developing guys. And Climate has already proven he can win 8 games in a season with just a totally developmental roster. It's in a much better place across the board there. But my question is going to be, can you replace the star power? Because, well, the depth of talent is there. You are missing Deuce Vaughn. You are missing Felix Anudike-Uzomah, first-round pick. You're missing Julius Brent, second-round pick. Josh Hayes was a sixth-round pick. He's gone in the secondary. Echo Boydo, gone in the secondary. He may make the Chiefs 53-man roster after just being a camp invitee. He's having a really nice camp in preseason for the Chiefs so far. So there's a lot to replace there. And those guys were studs that have been around for a long time. So I think the question becomes, all right, Trayshawn Ward, really nice running back transfer from Florida State, Big 12 offensive newcomer of the year. But him combined with DJ Giddens, are those two going to be enough to at least give you, 75, 80% of what Deuce Vaughn was giving you? I think Ward has a lot of potential. I think Giddens has a lot of potential. Looked great against Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, albeit kind of in garbage time in that game. But giving K-State fans a lot of optimism there. On the defensive side of the ball, like Khalid Duke, at one point he was the guy that everybody expected to have a meteoric rise to be the NFL draftee as a pass rusher, and it turned into Felix Anudike-Uzomah kind of stepping in front of him developmental-wise, and some injuries have held Khalid Duke back, but he's now back to just rushing the passer. They tried him at linebacker a little bit too. I think that stunted some of his growth. Can he step in and be the guy that everybody thought a couple of years ago was going to be the one that turns into an NFL draft pick? They have Will Lee at corner, who was one of the best JUCO defensive backs out there that Alabama made a serious run out late. They were able to hold off the Crimson Tide and keep him in there, but, is he going to be Julius Brents right away? We'll see. That, to me, is the question. If they're going to make it back to Arlington, I think they need some of those guys to really pop and become stars. And that is my question. I guess the other thing that could happen is Will Howard last year was excellent. When he played quarterback, K-State had the 5th most efficient offense in the country on the drives that he was out there in terms of points per drive. If he can still elevate his game without Deuce and make everybody around them better, if Keegan Johnson, a transfer that they love from Iowa at receiver, can be more consistent than Malik Knowles at wideout, maybe they have a star receiver all of a sudden. Ben Sinnott, I think, has star potential at tight end and was great at the end of last year. If some of those guys, if they get a couple of them to really hit and become stars like what they had last year, I think they'll have definitely a chance to get back to Arlington. But to me, that is a pretty big question mark.
What's it like seeing Deuce Vaughn run around? I know it's preseason, but, you can tell how he's going to translate. I'd imagine not really many surprises on the K-State fans' end of thing. You and many others, and we too. I mean, seeing him, we believe in Deuce Vaughn, but it's just kind of amazing to see others. Who is this guy running around here? Who's this guy for the Cowboys? What have been your thoughts on seeing him in action?
Well, one of my favorite pastimes has turned into taking either the NFL account or the Cowboys account and just looking at the quote tweets and seeing all the people in there like, all right, I was wrong. This dude can play. That's been one of my favorite things to do, to watch it, because I was sure. Like I compared it to when Tyler Lockett came out. I remember we had a Seattle beat writer, like kind of your old hardened beat guy that covered the Seahawks and had for a long time on my radio show back then. And I remember asking him, like, we were just talking about Tyler and what his role was going to be. And I just vividly remember him being like, yeah, special teams are going to want him to use, special teams. Maybe he'll catch a couple balls. We'll see. And I was a little put off by the attitude there. I was like, I don't think you understand. Like, this dude can really play. Like, this guy torched everybody in the Big 12, but it was this thought, like, he's a little bit small. I don't know if he'll be able to really hack it. And they were looking at it more as like a special teams sort of weapon. Same feeling that I had here with Deuce. I was like, you guys don't understand, man. This cat can play. And, he wasn't running 70 yards for a touchdown against Alabama for no reason. Like, he's legit. So it's been a thrill. I just can't say enough good things about not only the player he is, but just the person he is, like his family. He's just an unbelievable teammate, unbelievable leader, incredibly engaging to talk to, just like in an interview setting. You could not create like a more perfect player, I think, than what Deuce Vaughn is. Outside of the height, but I don't think that's really going to matter. I've got a lot of confidence that he's going to carve out a nice role in the NFL.
All right, so John, let's get straight to I have to know, and people in the chat room want to know. Were you Endeavor? Were you 12 Annan? Were you Karen?
12 and 9.
12 and I always say Annan. Were you Karen? I know that could. God, can you believe all the crap that was out there for so long?
Well, I have to tell everybody, I tweeted this the other day, but I just actually got the keys to my new house from Karen. She hooked me up with a nice mansion out here in Leawood, the suburbs of Kansas City. I kid, only maybe just a little bit. We can let the Pac-12 reporters do some digging on that. They can find out the real answers, I suppose. But man, I mean, it was wild. It was wild, and it's just so funny to see the aftermath of it. There have been so many hey, rest in peace, Pac-12. Here's kind of the postmortem article about what happened, how we got here. And every single one of those articles, I'm just going down a bullet point checklist of hey, here's something Big 12 Twitter said. Here's something Big 12 Twitter said. Here's something Dennis Dodd said. Here's something. And it's now being reported from the Pac-12 side as they all kind of rush to blame everybody. So, yeah, I mean, look, I try to say at the same time and stress this. I'm not a fan of where the game is going in general. I don't like the fact that we're blowing up a conference that's been around for as long as the Pac-12 has and taking major college football away from the West Coast. I'm not a fan of that in general, but look, this league has been trampled on for 2 decades now with all the jokes and always getting teams picked from it as opposed to being in a position of power. And so, forgive me if I do take a little bit of time to gloat about, one, being right, and two, just actually being here in a position where you're not the weak link in conference realignment. So it's a tough dichotomy. It's made it a little bit frustrating to see, especially all the outpouring of stuff for Stanford and Cal. If you want to be, I am very sad for Oregon State and Washington State, and I feel terrible for them, but it seems like most of the attention has been this Notre Dame attitude of oh, well, how could we possibly do this to Stanford and Cal? Stanford and Cal were a huge part of the problem, and Stanford has $37.8 billion in their endowment. I think they'll figure it out. They'll be okay. I feel bad for Oregon State and Washington State, but the rest of it, you can kind of miss me with that reaction.
How do you feel? I know you don't want to. Well, Utah sucks. We didn't really want them but no, I'm like you. I don't think the Big 12 can really. They can afford to breathe for a second, but I think anybody in college athletics has to still be very much on their toes. But how do you feel versus maybe what your original expectations were of how it was going to shake out, knowing what it's going to look like heading into next year?
Yeah, I'll be honest, and I said this as much when it was happening. I always kind of felt 30-70 that the Big 12 would wind up in a position like this. And maybe even then I'd have to go back and play the tape on what I said and what I was thinking at the time. But I was even thinking, hey, landing Colorado and Arizona would be great.
Yeah.
And it felt like Utah and Arizona State's reaction was so strongly opposed going to the Big 12. It always felt like pipe dream is probably a bit too strong, but it just felt a little far-fetched for me that was going to happen. And so I was honestly surprised that it worked out the way that it did, which I really shouldn't be with Brett Yormark and the way that he works, because that guy is incredible, and he's been able to make all the right moves, do all the right things, and kind of play 4D chess while everybody else, at least George Kliavkov, was playing checkers. So I probably was a little bit off even in that, but I was trying to be conservative with it, and really it was just a point of hey, the Pac-12 is leaving itself very vulnerable here. That was the point I was always trying to stress, and hey, it seems very clear that George Kliavkov has made a bevy of missteps. Now, I think with some of the reporting in hindsight, it looks like a lot of that may have been directed by the presidents, and you really could direct a lot of the blame up at the presidents who are listening to random professors on campus tell them that they're worth $50 million a year and things like that. But that stuff was so obvious. And, it kind of, sometimes you have to check yourself, am I crazy? I feel like I'm just reading the tea leaves here and looking at the facts presented in front of me, and it seems like this could be a problem for them. But I still felt like getting it across the finish line would be a little bit out of reach for the league. So pleasantly surprised. And honestly, watching Utah, I know was they were kind of the subject of my ire for a little while there with some of the fans on social media. But looking at their leadership, the press conference they had, I thought was great. It's easy to see why that football program has been so successful. I think the leadership across the board there is just excellent. And I think most of the fans seem to have come around. So I'm welcoming Utah with open arms. Arizona State fans, I think, are fine because they realize that their leadership is a problem. But, boy, that leadership when it comes to athletics seems to be a bit of an issue right now, university president and athletic director. So we'll see what's going to happen with that. But no qualms with Arizona State fans. So I'm hoping for a little period of kumbaya here for everybody.
Thank you, John. Great stuff. I'm glad we have you on. Appreciate your insight. Bunch of great stuff on K-State football, names, players, and Chris Kleiman, and also much more. John Kurtz from the KC Sports Network.
Yeah, good to talk to John, and I know exactly what he means when talking about just how sort of viewing realignment, weren't necessarily out there trying to break stories or be the give me all the credit and, I'm the only one that knows. And, I don't think, he was trying to be like that or a lot of others. I think, in general on this show, on, what he does and what others were trying to say throughout was like, hey guys, yeah, this may not happen, but you need to at least go check to see if there is a fire in the back room. Like, we're just telling you, we smell smoke.
Yeah, back in
the kitchen. And I might have seen a flicker, and I'm just telling you, you might want to go check that. No, it's fine. Shut up, loser. You don't know what you're talking about, you dumb southern, redneck. And then, okay, but there's smoke coming out of the ceiling. I just think that you should probably go check that before it all. No, you're a moron. You don't know how it goes on the West Coast. Go back to your hole. Those are flames coming up in the back of the house. That's an inferno. It's fine, stupid. Worry about your own, okay. And then, finally after a year, just a pile of ashes, and now they're looking around pointing fingers like, it was this guy's. It's like, you were warned.
Yeah,
you were
I've
warned
seen a lot of this,
500 times by 500 different people that you at least needed to check on how things were actually going. And hubris, all that. I know that, the blame game's become a very popular thing. And as we said yesterday, and as remains the case, you can point at a lot of different people. It wasn't just, this went wrong, and so therefore this all happened. A lot of people, and it doesn't
Presidents,
matter.
ADs,
it doesn't even matter, though.
Yep.
It doesn't matter who was at fault, because everybody, to some extent, TV network, to commissioners, to athletic directors, to presidents, to universities, everybody's got a role. Everybody's got a role, and however you want to divvy that up is fine. But in the long run, it really doesn't matter now at this point. What's done is done, and the damage is done. And now there are 4 schools trying to repair that damage in a number of different ways. It seems that they're looking into what option is best. But yeah, I mean, the house was on fire and smoke was billowing, and we were told that there wasn't a fire. So
yeah, we were told to go back into our trailers.
Yeah,
and worry about the porta potties. Speaking of that, Bob Thompson, do you have that one, Garrett? So here's Bob Thompson. This was after the story about Washington State's President Kirk Schultz and discussing how the Fox was trying to take out, I guess you could say Apple, not that Fox could do that, but you get the picture. There was a lot of other excuses involved. He was telling his inside feelings, as he did a lot. Kirk Schultz was very vocal.
Yeah,
so
I don't
Bob
want to necessarily
Thompson,
say just it's all excuse. I mean, he's explaining it. I know I'm probably nicer than most on this, but yeah, I mean, it is excuses in some ways, but it's also just telling your side of the story and how it unfolded, which I think some people wanted to know. So.
Yeah, so I've read, this is Bob Thompson, that it was Oregon that killed the Pac-12. Then it was Washington, then Fox and Big Ten, and now it's Arizona. What's next? San Diego State? If Apple wanted it that bad, they should have bought more linear games, brought more linear games to the table, paid a little bit more money, basically. They get the deal. None of this happens until 2030.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got a piece of the blame, and again, it doesn't really matter whose fault it was at the end. I mean, I guess for those who just need some finality, then you want to write the book and have that final chapter. I mean, that's going to be, to me, what happens with these 4 schools here pretty soon. But there will be a chapter or 2 written somewhere in some book about all this, whether it's a big realignment almanac or just somebody's personal Pac-12 profile or something. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of fingers pointing.
There'll be a book or a movie or a 30 for 30 or something.
I don't know if a movie would be interesting, but a 30 for 30 certainly could be possible, something along those lines. I'm sure that's already been worked up somewhere. But, I mean, yeah, it's a million different fingers can be pointed in a million different directions. Everybody from TV networks to presidents to to anybody involved to some extent had involvement in creating the outcome there. So, too little, too late, and we'll see what happens now with what lessons were learned by Kirk Schultz in Washington State as far as, how they maneuver forward. And I hope for their fan bases that they maneuver forward with some strength.
I do feel for both of them, Washington State and Oregon State, because one, Oregon State with what they have going, but Washington State, they have a really good chunk of people who watch their games when they are on TV, and here they are trying to figure out their future. The Big 12 has had some teams that have felt that way. A lot of them that remained have felt that way multiple times. When we come back, John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist. Paul's back tomorrow. I'm David Smoak with Craig Smoak, and this is 365 Sports. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Townwest Shopping Center just off of Richland Drive in Valley Mills, a home for great cigars. Just as you can name them, Cohiba, Padron, Macanudo, Ashton, and of course my favorite brand is Rocky Patel. They have a 48-foot walk-in humidor loaded with dozens and dozens of brands of cigars, and then some of the brands have numerous options of what you want. I like the Churchill length. I like it a little bit more smooth. I'm not one that likes my cigar to be harsh. I just want a smooth smoke, and it depends on what you like, and they have all of the options you need. And on top of that, they have Vita Dreams. It's a gummy. It's a CBD product. I take it every night. Had to kind of learn about how much is a half a gummy or a whole gummy or whatever it is. And it really does allow me to just kind of drop everything on my mind, and eventually you fall asleep. And there are nights, and there was 1, 2, or 3 nights ago when you toss and turn because you have so much on your mind it doesn't matter. But it does help alleviate any kind of anxiety, and you just fall asleep. It's a great feeling. And then on top of that, there's the THC product. It's called For Bad Days. It's for those who have a lot of pain. Whether you're a cancer patient and somebody else who has pain that just hurts a lot and you just need to have it damper down a little bit, they can help you with that, the THC product. Cheyenne, Ashley, and Carol, Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills and Richland Drive in Waco.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses. When it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less.
sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance, and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texans are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Welcome back to 365 Sports. It's time for our weekly segment with NFL Hall of Fame columnist John McClain. Brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus, and best in metal, steel, and pipe for large or small projects, with 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943. Read John's work at sportsradio610.com.
The NFL season winding down, the last week of preseason games, the start of the season around the corner. John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist, joins us on 365 Sports, and we'll get a few college football and also some Astros notes in there too. Thank you, John, for your time as always. When there were 4 NFL preseason games, and in some cases there were 5, well, a couple of teams had 5, there was kind of a protocol on how you handled playing your starters, if at all. How much has that changed with the number of games being just 3?
Well, it's changed way before they went to 3 games. When I left Waco, the trip, and came down here to cover hockey, my first Oilers training camp was 1977, when they still played 14 games and 6 preseason games. Training camp was 9 weeks long. Then the next year, they went to 16 games and 4 preseason. But forever, until the salary cap era, when there were 4 games, first game would be mainly for rookies and for new players. The second game, they play a quarter. Third game, stars play a half. And last game, they play 3 quarters. Made for an easy transition into regular season, playing a full game. The Oilers and Cowboys always played the last preseason game, so it was like a regular season game because the starters played so much. And I talk to a lot of those players all the time, and they don't think there are any more injuries than when they went all out in double days. They no longer have double day practices. They very seldom go all out, hit people, take them to the ground, because you're worried about injuries because of the cap. Cap changed everything. And I think there's a lot of positions, especially the offensive line. Any coach will tell you the offensive linemen need a better workout in the offseason. They need the linemen together more, and the linemen need to hit. Running backs need to hit, like Josh Jacobs, when he reports before the regular season starts so he can get paid his $10.1 million by the Raiders. He runs the risk of pulling a lot of muscles. Guys can go out and they can run till their tongues drop and be in the best shape possible, but it's not the same as football shape, getting hit, getting your timing. And so I'm always interested in guys who hold out if they have the soft tissue muscles that can hamper them all season.
John, a week from today, final roster cuts down to 53, but of course it's a little bit different. By now we'd have already had a little bit of a trim and here and there, but they're going just straight from 90 to 53. Is that notable in any way to you? Is that really that big of a difference, not having a couple of prior cuts where you're eliminating a handful of guys, or do you think that's going to be just chaos, all those names coming across the wire?
It'll be chaos, Craig, coming across the wire. The people I feel bad for, the people have to type all those names in to send them out across the wire. One school of thought is you keep players that long, they get more of a chance to show their team what they can do. Now, remember, 12 of them, there's going to be 32 times 12 practice squad players. practice squad players make $100,000. They make over $100,000. And if you're a veteran on the practice squad, you may make a lot more than that. So there's going to be a lot of guys cut, but a lot of guys are going to be re-signed. I like the fact it's done all at once, and it's going to be great for the airlines because you're going to see a lot of players crisscrossing the country going to tryouts. Everybody has players trying out every week during the season, but they're going to be scrambling because the players on your 53-man roster next week, that's going to change. You know, those guys that make the bottom 5 or 6, they got to hold their breath because there's a good chance they're going to get cut with teams bringing other players.
Yeah, it's crazy time. It's like, is that in any way similar? Probably not nearly as many. But right after the NFL draft, when people start to comb who has not been drafted and they start signing them as undrafted free agents?
Yeah, they'd actually do that before the draft, tell an agent, you know, if your guy doesn't get drafted, I'd like to sign him. And it's really better to not be drafted rather than being drafted in the 6th or 7th round because if you had multiple teams interested in you, you can get more money in a signing bonus than you can in 6th or 7th round. And so then when the draft's going, agents getting a lot of calls. And remember, the draft used to be 24 rounds. Then it was during the season. Then it was 18 rounds, then 16. When I started covering NFL, it was 16 rounds. And then it went down to 12 and 8 and now 7. So there's all kind of players in the Hall of Fame who today wouldn't be drafted.
John, I know folks can read more over at the Sports Radio 610 website, but what have you made so far of what you've seen through a couple preseason games, whether it be C.J. Stroud, whether it be something else about the team, and how much do you actually get to learn about D'Amico Ryans, the head coach, and kind of how he operates during these preseason games?
He admitted he's working on he's working his first-time head coach, and is only a coordinator for 2 years on his game days, game management. There was a play where they had on the first series, after an interception, they had a 3rd goal at the 1, and he should have called a timeout because C.J. Stroud let the clock run out. So then they go back to the 6 and throw 2 incompletions. And in the second drive, C.J. Stroud looked really good. He was throwing out routes on time. He was 5 of 6, 52 yards, had a perfect pass on 3rd down to Noah Brown from the Cowboys, who might have caught it, but Xavier Howard from Baylor reached in at the last instant, made great play. Another one Brown should have called. But so all of a sudden, people are really excited about him. He needs to play in this last preseason game because they're going to get their clocks clean when they go to Baltimore for the first game. But right now, everybody's learning. They have first-time head coach, first-time coordinator, a new defensive coordinator, and they're all trying to get their act together at the same time.
John, the Astros and Rangers have been kind of, we're
not talking about that right now. It's
I have a column on sportsradio610.com about this exact same thing. Astros stunk it up here against the Mariners. Were humiliated. They're 2-8 against the Mariners, but they bounced back and beat the Red Sox last night. Now, Yordan Alvarez can't play because he got his finger caught in the door. Kyle Tucker missed the Seattle series except for a pinch hitting assignment because he had a tummy ache. This isn't the time to be hitting your finger in the door and getting a tummy ache. Rangers lost 5 in a row. Astros have won 1 of 4. Astros are 1.5 back. Mariners are 2 back. Mariners have a 7-game winning streak. And guys, the Mariners play the White Sox, the Royals, and the A's before the end of August. I think by the end of August, the Rangers and Astros are going to be looking up at Seattle.
Rangers came out of the break and went like 12-2, made some changes. So did Houston with Verlander. But they are now in a funk. Their bullpen has caught up with them. They've lost 2 or 3 times, blown the lead. And, it's like two people who are in a golf tournament where they're both in the same group and they're even or within a stroke of each other, and a guy behind him comes in and like shoots 5 under. You know what I mean? And they forget about who else is in the field, and that seems to be happening at least up until this particular time.
Astros starting pitching has been terrible. Their bullpen since August 1st has been the best in baseball with the lowest ERA. Hitting's inconsistent, but Dusty Baker's getting a lot of criticism for some of his managerial decisions and personnel moves. But it's fun. When 3 teams are within 2 games apart, that makes for a great race.
Absolutely. John, did we ask you yet about Tank Dell? If Craig, you did earlier, I'm not sure if you did. But Tank Dell had somebody in our chat room, the kid from Houston.
He was great in the first game, made an incredible touchdown catch, had 5 catches. They kept him out because he had a slight hamstring injury. That guy is the only player on the team, every time he gets the ball, he's capable of going the distance. If Noah Brown, they signed from Dallas, starts in a slot with Robert Woods and Nico Collins, Dell will come off the bench, but it's only a matter of time before he's on the field all the time. Even though he's 5'8", 165, he's like a gnat, and he can take it to the house.
Thank you, man. Appreciate your time,
Thank
John.
you, guys. Sick of 'em.
Here's John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist with us on 365 Sports.
Yeah, I mean, always good to talk with him. Texans will be a fascinating team to watch this year with just a lot of new things to be, mindful of. New head coach, first-time head coach, new quarterback, first-time rookie quarterback. Not to mention a number of other young players that they're raising up, like the Jalen Petries of the world, hotshot rookie in Tank Dell, Nathaniel, as his mom named him, or mom and dad named him. But, yeah, Tank Dell's definitely cooler. I see why he went with that. But, he was a fun speedster out of Florida that the Cougars picked up, and obviously had a lot of fun, enjoy watching him on Saturdays. And now, hoping that he can do the same thing in the same city for the pro team. And so far, the returns say that he probably will. He's a good player, so hopefully he gets all healthy and ready to go. And it's going to be tough, it sounds like, for them. They're still kind of working their way through everything, but there's at least a foundation starting to form in place. And, hopefully they've got the right guy in D'Amico Ryans as well. I know there's a lot of people that feel like he's going to do big things. So, they're going to be an interesting team. They may not be a good team. We don't know yet, but they're going to be an interesting team in so many ways because of all the parts.
Yeah, they needed some juice. By the way, he mentioned that the Mariners, I think, have the White Sox in this next group of games. They just fired executive vice president and also their senior vice president, GM, Ken Williams and Rich Hahn. They were a part of helping the White Sox win a World Series way back in 2005. All right, Paul's back tomorrow. There is no top 5. Garrett Ross, great job today doing many of the normal things you do. And then on top of that, also handling the guests. Thanks to Levi, Emery, Jack, everybody. Hey, tomorrow, Garrett and I will be here in the morning to record week 1 of the Texas High School Football podcast that will start to launch every Thursday morning around 10 o'clock. And there it is. Garrett, thank you so much. We'll record that Wednesday with guests, some historical perspectives, some great games to look at, and then have that every Thursday at about 10 o'clock in the morning. Craig, thank you. Appreciate it. Have a great day, everybody. I'm David Smoak with Craig Smoak. Thank you so much. This is 365 Sports.
Ideal MRI is a small family business right here in Central Texas. We're open to support you while lowering the cost of healthcare bills. When you need an MRI, ask your doctor for an Ideal MRI. Visit us at idealmri.com or call us at 833